Blessings and good morning. Welcome to 4D Trinity. And I see someone's actually here already. April, blessings, good morning. Welcome, welcome. It is such a gift to be with you here today and always. I am Tuesday Mae Thomas, and this is 4D Trinity, where we bridge fourth dimensional consciousness. That is the consciousness that is the truth in your heart. It is your ability to perceive love, to see love, to speak love, to give and receive love. Not only here on this dimension, but multidimensionally. It is your ability, really, if we are going to put a name to it, and forgive me if this gives you a knee-jerk reaction, but it is really us aligning and attuning to that part of us that is always at one with Christ consciousness, that is always at one with non-judgment, with seeing through the perceived schematics of time and space, seeing through the veils of illusion into the heart of the matter, into the truth. It's choosing forgiveness. It's seeing beyond those things that we would usually block, that would usually block our sight to a greater awareness and a greater knowing of love. So that's what we do here. We bridge this fourth dimensional consciousness, which we can imagine is encoded in every cell of our being, really, in every part of our DNA, really. Yet the heart center, right, is the hub of this consciousness. It's being able to see through the veil from the heart space, being able to perceive, and actually to go beyond perceiving, which we're going to talk about today, into a place of knowing. So what we do here is we take all of these teachings, all of these exercises, all of these ideas and concepts, we talk about them, we eat them, we process them, we take them into our bodies, into our cells, into our DNAs, into our minds, and we allow that which resonates as truth for us to remain and to serve the connecting of the dots of wherever there is a disconnection, mind, body, and emotions, wherever those aspects of ourselves are not in alignment. We use all the tools, the teachings, the considerations, the ideas here at 4D Trinity to help bring mind, body, and emotions into a divine alignment, that they can all be aligned with that center point of the heart space, with the center point, vortex of 4D consciousness, of love and only love consciousness. Someone else has hopped on here. I'm so grateful. Blessings, Mimi. Welcome. So I'm very warm here. I'm going to turn my little fan on. Pardon me 1 second. I think it's probably... Woo! All right, so we'll see if we can get a little Beyonce fan action here. I live in the desert, as some of you know, and it's gosh darn it's hot. It's hot as a out here. It's really getting warmer and warmer by the day. So thank goodness for all of these divine appliances that make it bearable. So yes, today we are talking about ESP, extrasensory perception. Do you have the experience of knowing what's going to happen before it happens? Do you have the experience of being able to read people's minds? Do you want to have that experience? And let me caution this by saying, be mindful what you ask for, because you will certainly receive it to the degree that you are able to, and that which serves your highest good. But we don't always know what the labyrinth of that pertains to. So sometimes when we ask for psychic abilities, we ask for our sensitivities to be activated. There could be a probability deep within us that is saying yes, and where we have been practicing a multitude of layers of becoming ready for this on a subconscious level. But then when we ask for it on the 3D level and it comes, it can sometimes blow us out of the water and freak us out. Because all of a sudden you're seeing, you're sensing, you're hearing, you're feeling into the invisible realms, right? Into the land of the metaphysics, into the realm where everything is happening, where sound is vibrating, where pictures are coming into and out of being, where words and thoughts are floating around through the grids and whatnot. And all of a sudden, you have access to all of that information. You have access. Now, granted, we always have access. And I wrote something down here. We are always picking up vibes from everything around us, right? We are always picking up vibes from everything around us. The question is, how aware are we of that? Now, and there's a lot of different aspects to this that we'll be getting into today. But again, being mindful of what we ask for. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later, because often it feels, well, not often, but in my experience I've had with students or fellows, right? Fellow students in these realms. And really them practicing spiritual pursuits just to activate their psychic senses, when in fact the humble way of mastery about it is that you simply practice your practices, the ones that you are divinely guided to be with, whether it is Reiki, whether it is, you know, different meditation or breath work, whether it is gazing with the candle, whatever it might be, whatever your practice is, yoga, really sincere, present, tense yoga that allows you to naturally come into a divine alignment whereby you don't have to try to go out there and to see or to try to tap into someone's thoughts. And that's also another thing, right? Because everything we do here is always for the highest good. So we never force a will. We never penetrate into someone's mind field without asking permission, without asking as it serves the highest good. We practice from the very beginning not getting into that habit. Blessings, Christine. Hey, girl. Thank you so much for joining this morning. So yes, we create a healthy ability to exercise our psychic abilities. And as you, with sincerity, practice your meditations, practice your prayers, practice all of those aspects that bring us into that alignment with what lies beyond the physical world, we naturally come into an attunement and an alignment with our ability to perceive, to, on an extrasensory level, perceive what is present with our intuition, right? We tap into, our spiritual practices help us to tap into the I, the one knowledge, the I that is ever still and ever present, that knows. And your intuition speaks to you in different ways. We have an intuition which is like a soul knowing, a feeling, right, of intuition. But there's also a very physical level of intuition, which is that gut, that sometimes it's not so ethereal, where it's a feeling, realization, sensation. And it's more of like in the gut of your stomach, you're like, I know this does not feel good. Or you're like, this feels amazing. I have a really good feeling about this, you know, whatever it might be. But our body, right, is like a barometer. If we imagine, remember we were talking about the DNA, and the DNA direct network antenna is what I call them. And that they are transmitters and receivers, but also we are just one big transmitter and receiver. And the cleaner, the clearer your mirrors are, which we talked about last week, the clearer the images, the pictures, the information you will receive. Now, why would you even want? Why would you even want to have ESP? Well, I think it's an interesting question. It's a natural capacity that we all have. And at a certain point in your life, you may just very naturally be inclined to exercise those abilities, to practice honing those skills. And there's nothing wrong with that. Again, we practice everything for the highest good of all. We are not trying to practice this in order to manipulate people, places, and things, right, against any will. We are simply sharpening our ability to attune into the present moment and to actually go beyond, as we were saying earlier, the veils of information of what things look like. Because often, as we get into our spiritual world, we open our spiritual selves and we activate that divine connection with the higher self, we come to realize that often what things look like on the outside is just the tip of the iceberg, that there's actually so much more happening within the individual, behind the scenes, under the layers. And you know it if you're a healer, or if you've ever shared even prayers with a friend, and you get together and you say your prayers or you do your healing. And then it's like there's these layers as that relaxation comes into play. There's these layers whereby you or the individual, the other person maybe you're practicing or sharing with is like, wow, that really took me into a place where I saw the light. I saw the reasons why I've had resistance towards a person, place, or thing, why I've been resisting that healing, or it's allowed a sacred space for a part of that healing to complete itself and to come full circle. So we are a transmitter and a receiver. We are constantly, right, in the midst of information, everyone's thoughts, the trees, the squirrels, the plants, everything is speaking to you. And I tell you this, I speak to you of this from my own personal experience. In 1996, well, and I've had many, this one Kundalini activation. In 1996, I was in Los Angeles, and at the time I was living with a dear friend, and I was sitting in the living room, and I couldn't sleep. And all night it was that like monsoon, thunder rain, just thunder and crashing, just floods of rain. And at the time, I was always with a tape recorder, a cassette tape recorder, and that was my journal, as I would dictaphone diary is what I would call it. And I remember setting the little tape recorder out on the balcony and recording like an hour of this rain and this thunder, and it was so powerful. I could not sleep that night. I was sitting on the couch in the living room like zzz, like something was transmitting through me that night. I sat there still like an antenna all night long. I didn't even know exactly what was going on, but I could feel an electrical system activating through my system, conjoining something higher, something much bigger than me was connecting with me. And I was zapped the whole night. I sat there. I had to go to work the next morning. I thought, I'm not even going to try to go to sleep. I'm just going to go straight into work. At the time, I worked at a bookstore called the Bodhi Tree Bookstore, which is so amazing. It used to be in West Hollywood. Now it's just online. And it was really a beautiful hub of spirituality, and a lot of amazing people used to go through there. Anyway, I'm walking to work. I leave the apartment, and all of a sudden, I'm very aware that I'm very sensitive, and that everything is alive, and everything is talking to me. And I'm going like, what? I felt like I had like 2 antennas, right, the night before, and psychic enough. From the early age, I was seeing auras, definitely getting downloads, interpreting, giving psychic readings, reading people's auras, you know, as it was guided to a fashion at that point. And I was doing all this with my 2 antennas, boop, 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 boop. Well, I walk out of the house and I realize that these antennas have grown to be like from 2 to 1,000. And all of a sudden, I felt like I was wearing this crown of antennas. And it was a freaking trip. And because I hadn't slept the night before and I had such a spiritual, what I didn't realize until later was a Kundalini activation with the lightning and the thunder and the water and the sound and all the stuff that just kept me up on the couch all night. Well, all of a sudden I go out and I'm wearing this whole headpiece. All of these antennas are lit. And now, believe me, I had taken LSD before this. So I had already talked to the rocks and to the mountain and to the birds and to, to nature. But this was a completely sober moment. And I walk out of the house and all of a sudden I'm looking down at a squirrel on the street and the squirrel's like, hey, good morning. And I'm going like, whoa, they speak English. And like, I knew that they did, parts of us like already know that there's a constant communion and communication going on. But this was like the most, like, it was surreal, but it was the most real experience that I ever had with a little creature like this ever. And I was like, oh my God, you can hear my thoughts, can't you? Total telepathy. And the squirrel's like, of course I can. Ha ha ha. And it like, it does what it does and runs up the tree. So I'm walking down the street and what I realize is that the sidewalk is talking to me. The trees are talking to me. The grass, the blades of grass are talking to me. The clouds in the sky, everything is saying hello. Everything. And it was very, very surreal. It was very shamanic in a way. Crazy. Anyway, I remember at a certain point, and it's I have the whole thing, and it's about a 6-hour tape ride. I have about 6 tapes of me taping this situation, which is me going through a Kundalini experience, which I'm going to put as like a book on tape later down the line. And it will be the one, if you're familiar with my book, The Reiki Apprentice, and thank you so much. All of my links are down in the show more box. You can check out my books and stuff later. But it's going to be this, it's what happens before that journey. It's a part of that. Anyway, bottom line is that there's this transmission that's constantly activated within us, and to different degrees, it will be bumped up as your body, mind is ready to hold that new level of experience. So another part of it is I remember walking and seeing this amazing leaf on this tree. And it was the first time, you know how until you're aware, you would walk by a beautiful flower, a beautiful rose garden, and you wouldn't maybe, for me anyway, I wouldn't think twice about being like, oh my gosh, that is such a pretty leaf. Let me take it, right? Yet this was the first time where I walked up to a tree and I was like tripping on this leaf. It was so powerful and so beautiful. And I remember going to reach for it as I would have in the past. And then I paused because I could hear the tree sort of saying, what are you doing? In a very nice way. And I stopped and I thought, oh my God, of course, it's alive. Everything's been talking to me. Why would this tree be any different? And I said, hi. I pulled my hand back and I said, hi. I really love this leaf. May I have it? And in that moment, I just waited. And nothing happened, and I didn't hear or sense, which we're going to be talking about the voices in and outside of your head today as well. But I didn't sense or get anything particular about it, so I just stood there, which was new for me, because I would have been a little more feisty, a little more impatient in the past. This was 1996. And then I noticed a leaf from over here on a different branch of the tree released and fell to the ground. And I looked up at the tree, and I was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And what I realized, what had happened, and the tree said, you're welcome. And what I realized that had happened is that I was going to do my automatic, like just, I like it, let me plug it and look at it and fancy it, put it in my journal and I'll look at it later. But instead of that, there was this like, oh yeah, it's alive. Let me ask it. May I, And it didn't give me that leaf, but it gave me a different leaf. So ESP, extrasensory perception. I did put together a little presentation for you, so we will be going into that shortly. I want to talk to you about this. Like, do you feel that you are sensitive in that way? And it's very interesting, as a youth growing up, as a youth growing up, we didn't have the word empath, did we? I mean, those of you that are around my age, we didn't have the word empath or empaths. We were just sensitives. We were just attuned, and all these things that are described as being empathic, is exactly actually what happens when one moves forward in a disciplined and sincere fashion along their spiritual path. One cannot help but become empathic. Yet the degrees of empathy, the degrees and the means and the ways that which this will happen will be calibrated to the degree of the order of your practice. Wow, that was a mouthful. So again, we can try to force our psychic abilities by wanting, by needing them, by forcing a will, pardon me, or we can simply, sincerely show up, do our practices, do our Reiki, do our meditation, say our prayers, chant, whatever all the things are that calibrates our energy. And we can allow that natural alignment to take place. And do you know that anytime I've had a Kundalini awakening, it has not been planned. We don't plan like, and on October 19th at 1 p.m., I'm going to go for it. I'm going to have a Kundalini experience. You are dancing, we are dancing with the sacred. And because of that, and because there is a divine alignment and the sacred always works for your highest good and for the highest good of all, and because time doesn't exist, there is not this format of us trying to force when our extrasensory perceptions are going to be activated. It is a very natural thing that comes along one's path to the degree that you are capable of being present with it. And sometimes I know those energies, those activations suddenly bump up like crazy and you're going like, oh my God, can I handle this? Can I handle this? This is a trip. I'm totally feeling really psychic right now. I'm very sensitive, yet knowing that we are always met with that which we can handle because it is in resonance with our vibration, with our frequency. And on some level, even if it's subconscious, we've asked for it because we know it is our truth versus asking for it out of a neediness of like, I want to be able to see auras now, and doing some magic potion to like, I want to be psychic. It's not, it's not like that. You already are. You already are psychic. Again, we are always picking up vibes. That's all we're doing with extrasensory perception. And we are going to be breaking down clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairsentience. But that's all we're doing. And we're always doing it. Even people, truck drivers, for an example, like people that you in a bubble of light wouldn't necessarily think that are psychic. Everybody has the ability to have a feeling, to have a sense about someone, about something, about a situation. Yet often it is when we are in a place where we are not grounded or that mind, body, and emotions are so out of alignment with the center of the truth, aligning to the heart space. That's when we can make decisions that are not so complementary to our path. But we'll always come back to center if we should choose it, though. We'll always come back to love, always come back to one. So it might seem like it's taking us off path, but also when these things happen, we are given an opportunity to then practice greater mastery, to practice greater skillfulness at being able to bring ourselves back home, right? So what's an example? An example is moving from a place of ego versus really paying attention and listening. I was with a Reiki student this last week, and I remember sharing a story. I have been a practicing Reiki master since 2001. A lot of experiences, a lot of attunements, a lot of whacked out craziness, a lot of alcohol and marijuana with Reiki. There are a lot of things that you would think are not so complementary and shouldn't go together. And this is the story here, is that I remember one night I was with a dear friend at the time, and this dear friend had really bad problems with their knees. And we had been out drinking. And I mean Irish style drinking, not just like, oh, we went for a glass of wine at happy hour, but we had been out drinking, we had been out smoking pot. We were like party girls that night, okay? We come home, we're hanging out, probably even having like another glass or something at the house before, you know, before the evening is done. But we were pretty. And I remember this person like out of the blue holding their knees and like having a sharp sense of pain, right? And here I am, I'm like, psh, I got Reiki. I know what to do here. I kneel down, I put my hands on the knees of this person, and within like 2-3 seconds, the energy shoots me 5 feet across the room on the floor. That was a lesson, right? The lesson being, I mean, number one, I was totally inebriated, which is not necessarily the best way to practice Reiki. What do I know though? Your higher self, your Reiki angels may have you do something when you've had a few drinks on you. But the point here is that it wasn't guided, right? I didn't ask the Reiki angels. I didn't ask my higher self. I just went in there with my ego being like, I got this. I know how to handle this. And the voltage of the stuff that was going on at this person's knees was to the fact, and the Reiki tried to show me a lesson, slapped me on the hand, sent me flying halfway across the room so that I could humble myself. So it took me off track, but it humbled me and it brought me right back on track in a more disciplined, devoted, humble way that had greater reverence. And like that, we learn reverence. For these psychic abilities, as you start to develop your sixth senses, you become very reverent and you become very mindful of what you want to hear. As you go from 2 antennas to 100 antennas to 500 to 1,000 or more, however you see it, all of a sudden you're going like, you get to manage, and your whole body really is an antenna, right? Every cell, every spark of DNA. But you get to manage. It is a responsibility. You get to manage this ability, your sixth sense. It is a responsibility for your well-being, but also then as you're going to hold space for others. And really it is bringing it back to your peace of mind, because if you're very wide open and you're like praying, I want to be more sensitive, I want to open up my chakras, my third eye, whatever. And then that starts to happen. And then you start to get all this information and downloads and feeling realization about all these people. You realize, I don't need to feel all this. I mean, unless you're going to go into business and it's your soul path to like go in and cleanse houses or to, you know, become a medium. I have friends that are mediums that are amazing. And they, you know, speak to the dead that have passed over. And that's like probably a whole other show. And I really want to get her on here. One of my dear friends from Ireland, Aveen, dear one, if you are watching, I need to figure this out, how to like do a guest thing on Google Hangouts. I think that would be awesome. So I know Christine left a comment, but it is a responsibility. And we're going to be talking about that as well. Back to work. Okay, love. Thank you for hopping on. And you know where we are if you want to come back and finish the show. So I have some notes, and we do have our little presentation. So again, we're always in the midst of vibes. We're always reading vibes, downloading vibes, or filtering vibes. Reading vibes is active. That's when we are consciously accessing our extrasensory abilities, our extrasensory perception. When we are reading vibes, like a friend might say, hey, what do you think about going to this art show next week? And a very sensitive person, me, you perhaps, might say, let me think about it. Or you can sit in that moment and close your eyes, and you don't even need to know where the location is. You don't even need to know who the artist is. You can just, from that question that they've asked you, you can quest into those grids, into that time and space, and get a download. And that's reading the vibes. You are actively, with the masculine energy, penetrating through the veils into a reading of what that art show looks like. And you can get a sense of if that serves you or not, if that feels intuitively good for you to be like, you know what, let's plan on it. I'm going to let you know for sure, but that feels good to me. Right? So you can do that. When someone comes to you for a job offer with information that you can consider. What do I want to say? Yes, okay, so you're going for a job interview. You haven't gone yet, but there's 3 different jobs, right? You can actively read the vibes using your 6th sense, using your extrasensory perception. You can voyeur in, and we always, let me say before we go in though, is that we always want to call on the white light. We want to make sure that we are divinely connected with the mind of God, with the mind of source, the mind of love, whatever name you give that is you, but also that is beyond you, that is the source of all creation. I like to call it love, and God is love. But we always want to make sure that we are plugged in and attuned to that. And then we want to make sure that we ask clearly from whom, we're going to go into this later, from whom we are getting information from. You can make sure that you ask your higher self, hey, higher self, I am in as one with the white light. I call you in, higher self. I have these 3 job interviews coming up. Here's the first job down in Lingley Town. I would like to read the vibes of this. Send me a download of what this feels like. And your higher self will send you a transcript. And the transcript may have words. The transcript may have just a feeling that you get about it. You may see something, clairvoyance, you may see something, right? And then you can ask that for the second one. And maybe it's an apartment. And you're saying, I'm going to go see a couple of apartments, you know, for the highest good, higher self, show me in the light. Give me some readings, give me some intuition, you know, feelings about this. And sometimes you don't get anything. And that's because you're just not supposed to know until you get there. And then things will converge. But you can quest into that. You can ask. But again, always connecting to the white light, always connecting and making sure that you know on purpose who you are asking from. Very important, because as we open ourselves, and we become conduits of greater love and greater light. And we grow all of these antennas. Well, guess what? Instead of the radio signals you would pick up, can you see that? Instead of the radio signals that you would pick up with just 2 antennas, now you've grown hundreds or thousands of antennas. So all of a sudden, you are picking up so many more frequencies, all of sorts of radio signals. So it's your job to align, to hone it in, to bring in your capacity so that you can fully just get the information that truly serves you now. If you receive all sorts of stuff, and that's where what we've noticed, you know, I worked for years with elders in the nursing home, folks with Alzheimer's, with dementia, with Parkinson's, and many different conditions that allow the individual to be in an altered state of consciousness, but not just for the moment where they're downloading with their 6th sense or their extrasensory perception what may be, what things feel like intuitively, what divine downloads their higher self is giving them, but where they live constantly in a realm of altered state, where that's what we were talking about earlier. That's the invisible realm where there are other beings from other dimensions that are like right here, right where you are. I try not to point, forgive me. Right where you are, I use the whole hand point instead of the finger point. Right where you are, there's a being, like possibly right here, and right here, and right here. And entities all around us, right? But because we maintain a clear white light and we do our practices, we know that which is like attracts its like. And so we maintain a clarity, and so that which comes into our domain is of that light. And working with those other kind of energies is a whole other conversation. Now let me see, we have someone joining us here. Blessings, Nicolina, hello. Ah, well, you're going to get to use your ESP. So this person, and I don't know if you are just a benign commenter, Nicolina, but you are saying, Alexander, 28 December, I am 18 December. We met at the party. We talked a lot. Does he like me and find me attractive? He said he wanted to kiss me. Is that a joke or not? Well, see, and these are the kinds of things. So whether you are just a troll, just here to write some random stuff, because obviously, this is not a Q&A, but I would love to do a 4DT Q&A sometime of like just questions and answers, all sorts of random. But that's not our thing today. But what I will invite you to do, Nicolina, is to consider these ideas that we're talking about and practice your own ability to sit with that. So what we were just doing is we were reading vibes, right? Using the masculine part of us, the ability to penetrate through the veils, to ask for a download, to receive a receipt of information, and to then read it, to feel through it, get a sense of feeling. And maybe you just get a color, maybe you get a number, maybe you see a little mini vignette, a movie, or words, right? So that's one way we can do that. Now, there's also downloading vibes. Sometimes you're just somewhere and it doesn't even matter where you are, and you just all of a sudden get download. Like often, you know, when I call my mom, she'll be like, oh my God, I was just thinking about you. And I'll be like, yeah, I got a download on my radar that was like, boop, boop, you know, and it was like, call the mom. And it's like, okay, call the mom, or it's call the grandma, you know, and it's simple things like that. And where the person, your grandma, your friend might be like, I was just thinking about you. You know, that's real like rudimentary ESP, where we are all psychic. According to A Course in Miracles, which you know I love, and I think the God phone, when it calls a little later, because God always calls on this show, is going to take us through a little bit in A Course in Miracles here this morning. According to those teachings in that book, all minds are joined. There is no way that we are not psychic. And if you think about it, and you know, the more psychic you become, I remember as I started branching out all my antlers. Yes, my antlers, my antennas. Same thing though, right? I became acutely aware that I was becoming maddeningly psychic to the degree that I was like, turn it off. How do I turn it off? Because it was starting to make me go a little cuckoo, where I was just getting downloads. Like I wasn't even asking for downloads. Does this happen to you? By the way, pay attention. If this happens to you, this is a beautiful thing if you are on the path of being a healer, a counselor, someone who holds sacred space for others. Yet, when it's unstoppable and you're just constantly getting readings about everyone, you're like, I don't need all this information. Again, unless that's what you do 24 hours a day, but be mindful what you ask for, right? Because then every building, every blade of grass, everything will be talking to you, and you'll just be like, you know, you could essentially go crazy. That's what I was saying. Okay, so the elders in the nursing homes, that's where they are operating from. They are operating from that plane of interdimensionality, right? Especially the ones that are experiencing this dementia or this Alzheimer's, where they are having conversations, they are doing things. You'll see them and they might be doing an action repetitively. They are operating in a different dimension, perhaps even speaking with interdimensional beings. It could be in the past, it could be in the future, right? But they are having these experiences out of the normal time and space. They are fully activated in their sixth sense. They are fully doing work in the other realms, but also why? Because their lower chakras at this point are not so activated, but the higher ones are. And this is what we would say in these realms. When you work with the elderly or a lot of terminally ill people, this is what happens, is that the lower chakras start to shut down, the physical grounding body chakras, that willpower to be in the body, right? To be on this planet begins to soften and shut down. And the spiritual, those higher chakras become open. And sometimes to the degree then where you move not only from being an Alzheimer or a dementia patient, and where you have these altered states of consciousness and these exchanges with other entities in other realms, but also, when it goes to the degree where the crown chakra and the third eye have been blasted open for some reason, then it can, the tipping point can shift, and one could, this is an analogy, but then one can imagine that then you are vibrating with the psych ward vibes, right? With the in a bubble of light, with the crazy, because the crazy is when all of those antennas are mad open, but you're not only seeing, you know, the angelic realm, but you're seeing the dark realms too. And often, right, these beings that would be perceivable through the sixth senses, through extrasensory perception, when one is in a psych ward grid mentally, has to do with drugs, right? Certain abuses. Speaking specifically about drugs, I know in my experience with anyone I've worked with that was in a psych ward, or that was diagnosed as having severe psychological disorders, where they could have a very conscious and coherent conversation with you, and halfway mid-sentence they'll be like, stop doing that. And they'll talk to someone in the invisible realm, and they could have a whole conversation. Or to the point where that entity or that being or that thing in the invisible realm begins to annoy them and disturb them to such a degree that they might have to stop having the conversation with you in order to take care of business in the other realms. And again, often these energies can be tricksters, they can be of the shadow. And so what my point is in saying this is that over time, as you develop, as your psychic, sensitive, spiritual abilities begin to develop more and more, you begin to become aware that you get to manage, that it is a responsibility, and that you don't have to walk around being wide open, right? Because the more antennas you have, the more your DNA awakens, you are open to receiving, to perceiving those downloads of information from all people, places, and things, which is a real trip if you think about it. It is a trip when this actually starts to happen. Dead people, ghosts, when it really starts to happen every day, more and more as a reality, you begin to realize, yes, it is a gift. Yes, it is an altered state of consciousness. And you begin to be able to shift from altered states of consciousness into living, waking consciousness. And they start to bleed into one another. It's like when I very first started meditating, and I got to that point where I could sit for a full half hour and meditate, it took me several minutes. If I sat for half an hour back in the day, like 20 years ago, it would take me at least 5 minutes to like come back into my body, to kind of like wake my eyes and squeaky, squeaky, and like, you know, come back. Whereas now, right, what happens is as we exercise ESP, clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairsentience, consciously, which believe me, we've got more coming. I know, I'm warming up. We're getting there. We're painting the foundation. But the more you start to do all this stuff, the more you realize, like, I have to take care of this. I get to manage this. And I feel like there was something else I was going to say, and then I distracted myself. It'll come back. It'll come back. So how do we manage this? What I've learned to do, I didn't even think we were going to be doing this, but we might do this. Okay, so what I've learned to do is, you know, an astronaut helmet? This is a metaphysical energy tool, which means the universe knows what it is, how to activate it and use it for the highest good on your behalf. And if it resonates with you as a truth, as something that is resonant in that your body, mind feels like, yes, use this, then please, for the highest good, as you are guided, any time and space, use it. You imagine, right? So when you feel like you're getting psychic and you're getting a little too psychic and you're getting a little too many downloads and information and impressions from everywhere, place your bubble of light helmet on. All it is you imagine, you know, like a big astronaut helmet, right? That is just clear. It's just clear light. You just imagine that being set on. And what happens is this allows in only information that is resonant with love and with light. It also only lets out information from your mind field that is love and light. So if you have a discordant thought, if you have a funky thought, if you accidentally have, because we don't judge, right? Because if you accidentally have like a judgy thought, a thought, it's not going to go. It's not going to penetrate beyond the helmet. So in this way, you can be in the world and not pulled by it. Because I know as these psychic abilities activate, it's exciting. You're all of a sudden talking to ghosts. You're talking to entities. You're like downloading future information. You're reading tarot cards. You're all intuitive, and people are like, "Oh my God, you're totally right on," you know. And it's like exciting to one degree, yet at the other degree, learning to manage and take responsibility for it is very, very important, because then they'll start those energies, those entities contained in the walls of those houses that you read, contained in those conversations you have with your clients or with the people that you read tarot for, or whoever it is, your friends that you counsel. If you're not completely detached and only allowing what serves for the highest good to happen in that time and space, the possibility of parts of those entities or energies or information to find a place to snuggle into your energy, to find a life force and to survive can happen. And now we're going a little off track, so I'm not going to spend too much time here, but just in the sense that those energies or those entities or those whispers may come in your dreams. And again, sometimes that's a part of your path where you talk to dead people in your dreams. It just is, you know, and like, and if that really is, and if you've, you know, come to terms and you're like, okay, let me work with this. How do I harness this? How do I honor it? How do I serve with this? Then that's one thing, right? Yet it's another thing when all of a sudden you're awakened and you're going like, whoa, bombardment. I'm so feeling so empathic, so psychic, so like I know everything about everyone. Turn it off, turn it off, turn it off. Put your helmet on, right? Only allow in that which resonates with love. Only allow out that which resonates with love. Surround yourself with white light. White light is like the tool of choice that will always bring you back home to love. It will always, like, white light is unfuckable with. And that's what you are inherently on a soul level. And white light, bringing white light down, surrounding ourselves with white light helps our body, mind, spirit, emotions, all of us be contained and remember our truth. So that will always be one of your tools that you access. In my book, The Reiki Apprentice, and you know what? Let me just go and grab that little book while I have it here. In my book, The Reiki Apprentice, which is available on paperback and on Kindle, and soon I will have it on iBooks. Oh, it's also available on Kobo. I believe I have viewers in Canada and in Alaska, and I thank you so much. This book is available on Kobo for my dear readers that are outside of the States as well. Soon I'll have it on Barnes and Nobles. The point is that there's a chapter in here called Open Aura. I had taken LSD, and that's all documented in the book, or the whole story of the trip, of the adventure. And then at a certain point after, I realized, I don't know, weeks afterwards, I realized that my aura is wide open and there's all sorts of entities and beings coming in and coming through. And my job was to seal up and to heal my aura. So there are certain things we can do. I know I was talking about drugs, right? That can take us. I mean, yes, we can have a very conscious journey with mushrooms. We can have a very conscious journey with medicine, with ayahuasca, with tools. We can vision quest to bring ourselves into receiving divine downloads. Yet always, it is to do it with mastery. How would a master do this, right? Is to be a humble student And so in that story, Open Aura, I was so wide open that I was not only hearing, actually I wasn't hearing any angels. I had ripped my aura so wide open with that LSD. And because I created very little sacred ceremony around it, and I don't do LSD anymore, but I used to do it back in the day, and it was never sacred. I never created a sacred bubble of light or did any of that. I was just having the journey, so to speak. And it resonated with me, and it was a teacher. It was a medicine in a way, because there's two scenarios where I take LSD and I have very, very huge psychic, spiritual, extrasensory, mind manipulation, psychic territory boundary stuff with this that I got to practice. So remember, you maybe aren't so spiritual, it takes you off path, but then as you come back home, it brings you back on path even stronger. So from that first LSD experience, where my aura had been ripped wide open, the first experience in the book, that is, I got to come back to white light and use white light to heal and seal my aura. Why? Because I was hearing voices in my head that were telling me to kill myself, that were telling me that the world is going to blow up, that were showing me visions of nuclear war on this planet. I mean, weird stuff. Like all of a sudden, I had ripped my third eye, my crown open to the degree that I was not protected. Or any light that I had was leaking out. My energy was leaky. My aura was like a Swiss cheese, big holes in it. And I was totally penetrable. But at the same time, I had like all of these antennas activated. So I was receiving infinite downloads, but that were not of the light. So I got to bring myself back to the white light, back to the white light, back to the white light, practice that discipline. Because I became very depressed, practice that discipline with coming back to being one, coming back to knowing that love is the truth. Anyway, downloading vibes, right? Filtering vibes. So that's what we're talking about, filtering vibes. So with ESP, extrasensory perception, we are reading vibes, which is the active masculine, perceiving. You know, my teacher, so this book also documents my 3-year apprenticeship with a Grand Reiki master, who is also a trans-channel healer, who every week was a trans-channel, and she channeled entities that discerned or that shared metaphysical energy tools for healing, for wellness, for wholeness, right? To learn how to be a master of your time and space. But also there's an eerie twist in the book, because my teacher is a madly psychic, and she taught me how to be madly psychic, but through a very manipulative way, psychically, that I wasn't aware of until the very end. And I'm not going to give away the whole story. But it's like that. Psychically, intuitively, you don't know until you know. And there are teachers along the way. But she taught me how to masculine, how to penetrate, right? How to read vibes actively, where you're like, okay, go in. You know, what's happening? Here's the situation. This man, this woman, they're in the coffee store, and go. And you penetrate and you go in and you get the reading. Okay? So that's reading vibes that is active. And then you have the downloading vibes, which is the feminine. It is the more receptive, intuitive, let it come to you rather than going in. So you could do the same thing. You could say, well, think of these two people. They're at the cafe, and go. And instead of like piercing through to see, you sit and you allow what is for the highest good for you to see, if anything at all. And sometimes there is nothing. Filtering vibes. So another thing I wanted to share about that is that, you know, when you feel like you're just getting a hella psychic, very empathic, you're feeling more things than you want to feel, you're feeling everyone else's feelings, you know, it's hard for you to know what is your center, what is their center, especially as you start to bump up your frequency, you do more healing work in the world, you share massive lessons about understanding what is yours and what is theirs. You can turn down the volume. So if you're getting clairvoyance, you're getting visions, you're getting feelings, clairsentience, knowings about things, you're hearing things. And it's overwhelming you. and it's taking you from your center, and you don't know how to digest it all, how to prepare it all, how to hold space for it all, and it's overwhelming at first, you can turn the volume down. On your visions that you receive clairvoyantly, you can turn the volume down. On the clairaudience, on the voices, on the music, on the however you receive your hearing senses, you can turn the volume down. On the feeling, the intuitive, like, I know what everyone else is feeling, turn the volume down. I mean, literally, that's all you have to do. A lot of this stuff with the metaphysical energy tools and the way that we access information and our psychic insights, our psychic attunement and alignments, just has simply to do with us being conscious, a conscious participant in the situation, and making a decision one way or another that is, yes, turn it up, I want to hear more, or let me turn the volume down here. And you can always go in and reset it, but it's up to you. You see, you have a choice. And I think that's a very important thing for you to know, is that you do have a choice. You don't have to be like, oh my God, I'm just psychic and I can't, like it's driving me crazy, you know, and I want to just turn it all off and never have it again. You can learn how to activate your sixth sense capacity and be in the world and not of it. And that, I feel, is really bridging heaven on earth. When it's done from that higher plane, when it's done from a higher intention that is based in love, rooted in love, then everything you're going to receive and perceive and download is not only going to serve your path, but it's going to serve the greater whole too. So I feel like we're supposed to get on and get into our presentation, because I do have more to share, but I want to make sure that we get it all in. So let's see what our friend said here. I'm not a troll, haha. Interesting, keep it up. Okay, cool, Nicolina. Sweet. Well, I pray that what I share here today serves you, because this is it, right? When you do have a question, like, is he into me? Does she like me? Or whatever it might be. Am I going to get the job? You know, we might go for a tarot reading. We might, oh, the God phone. Ask intuitively, and we can ask. God phone. Hello. Oh, hello? Dear God. That's right. I did write a song years ago called Dear God. Dear God, I'm praying to you. Dun, 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 but I know it's true. Something like that, right? And I feel like I'm heading for a breakdown. Something. I got to pull out those words. You have a good memory. God's good. God says hi, everyone. Okay, and God, every week, God's like, wants me to repeat this notion of what God is. So God is saying, I do not have genitals. I am neither a he or a she. I am a feeling realization. God is saying, I am a feeling realization of oneness. Okay, of unity consciousness. That is so beautiful. That is so powerful. Okay. You feel like you should have called later? Well, you can always call back. God's like, no, it's okay. We'll do it now. So you do. So God's going to have us read from A Course in Miracles a little bit later. Oh, first we got to do the presentation. First we're going to do the presentation, because what we're going to read in A Course in Miracles is going to pertain to this and to this whole thing of where we're going. I love that. Okay. Thank you, God. Much love. God says blessings and namaste. Namaste to you, dear God. Okay, bye. How cool is that? So, we will read a little bit from our Course in Miracles a little later, but now we're going to get into our presentation. Tammy! Blessings and welcome, dear one. So you are totally in time, Tammy, for our presentation, which I'm very excited. And so we're going to start to break down some of these ideas. And let's go ahead and get in here. And I'm going to share my screen. So then you should be able to see this here shortly. All right. Very cool. So ESP, extrasensory perception. Now, what I do here, and I know you know this if you've watched before, is that often I like to just look things up on Wikipedia or Google, just like the dictionary on Google. And I feel that the definitions supplied and shared there really reflect the consensus, the collective consensus of what we as an aggregate have agreed upon as these words being defined as, and that gives us a root. So extrasensory perception, let's just break this down. Extra, added to an existing or usual amount or number. So a usual amount or number. So extrasensory perception. We have been taught and we know that there are 5 main senses that we all have and that we all access. And then we'll go down a little bit to a greater extent than usual. So extra is to a greater extent than usual. Extra is in addition. So an item in addition to what is usual or strictly necessary. Okay, so that's extra. Sensory. Sensory. Relating to sensation or the physical senses. Transmitted or perceived by the senses. So sensory. We are sensing physical senses. Extra sensory. Physical senses or sensations transmitted or perceived by the senses. Remember, we are a transmitter and a receiver. Perceiving is receiving. A sense. Now I'm going to read this. And we're not going to go into all of it, but we're just going to read it and let the words wash over us. A sense is a physiological capacity of organisms that provides data for perception. The senses and their operation, classification, and theory are overlapping topics studied by a variety of fields, most notably neuroscience, cognitive psychology, and philosophy of perception. The nervous system has a specific sensory nervous system and a sense organ or sensor dedicated to each sense. Humans have a multitude of sensors: sight, vision, hearing, audition. And I think this is interesting, that sight is vision and that hearing is audition. Taste, gustation, smell, olfaction, and touch, somatosensation. These are the 5 traditionally recognized senses. The ability to detect other stimuli beyond those governed by these most broadly recognized senses also exists. And these sensory modalities include temperature, thermoception, kinesthetic sense, proprioception, pain, nociception, balance, equilibrioception, forgive my translation, vibration, mechanoreception, and various internal stimuli. Okay, so it goes on and on and on. However, what constitutes a sense is a matter of some debate, leading to difficulties in defining what exactly a distinct sense is and where the borders between responses to related stimuli lie. Okay, the most thing I want you to take away from this is just this fact that what we have agreed upon collectively is that a sense is the capacity of your organism to provide data by the means of perception. And we perceive through the nervous system, through sense organs. Hearing, seeing, tasting, smelling, and touching. Now think about your psychic abilities. Have you ever heard voices in your head? And we're going to ask you this later when we come out of this. We'll have a little conversation because we're going to talk a little bit about who those voices are, why they're there, how you can keep them there, how you cannot keep them there. But most importantly, I think, is how to discern what voices to pay attention to. And that could be a whole 4DT on its own. But for now, just think about it. Have you heard, you know, do you have a loved one that has deceased, but at the same time you've heard them speak to you in your ear? Have you simply heard words? Or do you pray to God? Do you pray to Christ? Some people pray to Christ and they're like, God totally talks to me all the time. And some people are like, are you crazy? Maybe they are, but you know what? Maybe they're not. When you develop the capacity and you open your channels to have conversations with deities, with entities, with God, with source, with love, with light, and that muscle, the musculature of that is awakened, then your ability to practice clairaudience, again, audience. I think that is so interesting because it requires you are the audience. Your ears, your eyes, your senses, you are the audience. So have you heard? Can you hear? Do you want to hear more than what you already do or at all, right? Voices, guidance. How do you feel or intuit guidance? Do you see it moving to the eyes? Do you see or do you sense color? Do you see color in people's auras? And maybe if you don't see color in people's auras, do you hear? Does a guidance, do your angels, do the guides that work with you say green? Even if your eye can't see green, or you do see green and you hear green as well. Are you able, clairvoyance, to see beyond the veils? Do you see into the past? Can you see into the future? And it's actually, it might sound really woo-woo, but it's actually very easy. And you know what? We do it all the time. Anytime you daydream, you're envisioning, you're voyeuring, you are going into the past or the future or into a quantum timeline reality. Wherever your fancy takes you, you can rest there. At the same time, clairvoyance is about you being able to see into the future of what happens, you being able to see into the past, and to, as you are guided, affect change in that past, which we'll talk about, which will set up a shift of timelines for the said future for the highest good of all. Taste. You know, taste is a very interesting one. Over the years of working with a multitude of individuals and groups, some very ill, terminally ill, different types of cancers and leukemia, different types of mental disorders, there is a very interesting thing that will happen when someone is very, very ill and they are releasing a lot of tar, they are releasing a lot of shadow, a lot of negative, despondent energy. Sometimes I will taste a metallic taste on my tongue. Do you ever get senses through your faculty to taste when you have a psychic experience, when you have an extrasensory experience? Does something happen? Do you get tingles on your tongue, or does your mouth get dry? Do you salivate more? Do you have a certain taste there? And then we go to this sense of smelling, the olfactory sense, being able to smell. And I remember the first time my teacher said this to me, and now it's debatable whether, since she said it to me, now that's why it's turned on in me. And isn't that often, though, how the teachings come? Right? Those teachings that we are in the presence of, as they resonate with us, we will find them being a part of our lives and a part of our practice for the highest good. Well, I remember she said we were going in to work on someone and they had cancer. And it was a pretty advanced cancer. And I remember her saying, "Can you smell that?" And I said, no. She was able to smell beyond the veil than I was. Her senses were activated to that degree. She said, "I can smell the cancer. And it's really hardcore." And I was like, whoa, are you serious? She's like, yes. And her remedy for that, which was really personal for her, so she didn't have to be in the presence of that smell, because according to her, It was pretty vile. It was pretty hardcore. She said Om Namah Shivaya 3 times. And that was her remedy to disappear the scent so that she could be in the presence of this and do her work. And then, of course, we have that sense of touch, right? Through feeling things, through placing our hands. If you're a parent, right, you can feel things from your children when you touch them. If you're a healer, you get a sense of people, of issues, of downloads of information when you touch your clients, or even if you are non-invasive and simply working with the aura field, you know, you will sense. There's a sense. We pick up information through these senses. Extrasensory perception. Now we're going to read these words and we're going to, I was geeking out on this. I was geeking out hardcore last night on all of this. Extrasensory perception. I'm going to read here at the top because I think it's interesting. For the 1934 book by Joseph Banks Rhine, See Extrasensory Perception, percipient redirects here. For percipient, witness, see witness. Now, perception and percipient, I think about percipient as a participant in perceiving. And I like how it says see witness. Anyway, so that's all we're doing with our senses, is we are a witness to what it is, to the information our senses are downloading. Yet extrasensory perception takes us into a realm of seeing and sensing, of tasting, of hearing, of feeling that is beyond the quote-unquote norm, quote-unquote normal ability. Extrasensory perception, or ESP, also called sixth sense or second sight, includes claimed reception of information not gained through the recognized physical senses, but sensed with the mind. With the mind. The term was adopted by Duke University psychologist J.B. Rhine to denote psychic abilities such as intuition, telepathy, psychometry, clairaudience, and clairvoyance, and their trans-temporal operation as precognition, or retrocognition, seeing into the future, seeing into the past, sensing into the future, sensing into the past. Parapsychology is the study of paranormal psychic phenomena, including ESP. Parapsychology has been criticized for continuing investigation despite being unable to provide convincing evidence for the existence of any psychic phenomena after more than a century of research. Well, isn't that cute? Because the more that you do your own research, the more you find that every government and that police and that these institutions that perhaps would not normally lean in way of extrasensory perception and parapsychology use psychics, they use mediums, they use people that have these powers and these gifts to penetrate through the veils, to use remote viewing, to get a hunch, to get a lead on a case. So it's so interesting. The scientific community rejects ESP. So dramatic. They reject it due to the absence of an evidence base, the lack of a theory which would explain ESP, and the lack of positive experimental results. It considers ESP to be pseudoscience. Okay, so that's a whole other thing. Yet, given that there is a multitude of information that is evidence-based, again, that's why these larger institutions use individuals that are turned on and awakened. And believe me, that is a whole rabbit hole. If you go onto YouTube and you ask for the highest good, you will be led and you will see where there are a multitude of stories of information of beings that have been on the other side of that MK Ultra, where beings that are highly empathic and intuitive and have psychic abilities have been used, you know, inappropriately or appropriately or against their will to do certain things interdimensionally, cosmically, galactically. I mean, there's stories upon stories, but we'll hone it in. Extrasensory perception, or ESP, is also called sixth sense. Remember that movie, Sixth Sense? I see dead people. Do you see dead people? Do you see dead people? Have you ever seen a ghost? That is sixth sense. That is ESP. When you see something that is not quote unquote normal in our 3D realm, you are exercising ESP, or ESP is exercising through you, meaning your psychic abilities are turned on, your intuition, your telepathy, your ability to perceive what is beyond. So let's check this out, the second sight idea. I think this is interesting. Second sight is a form of extrasensory perception, the supposed power to perceive things that are not present to the senses. Ah, second sight is a supposed power to a power. It's a power, by the way. Did you know that second sight is a power? Isn't that interesting? To perceive things that are not present to the senses, whereby a person perceives information in the form of a vision about future events before they happen, precognition, or about things or events at remote locations, remote viewing. And again, there is no scientific evidence that second sight exists. Reports of second sight are known only from anecdotal evidence given after the fact. Okay. Debatable. Second sight. I'm still, my mind, when I first read this last night, is a form of extrasensory perception, the supposed power to perceive things that are not present to the senses. So now we just went through the senses. So second sight, which, and we know here, if you watch and you share here at 4DT, we're all about lighting up the third eye, and that understanding that the third eye is the area where the light sight becomes activated, where as we turn on the heart chakra, the third eye becomes lit. As you turn on the third eye, the heart becomes lit, and you begin to see through the light of your second sight, which we could really say is your first one and only sight that you ever really need. But it is also the place, this second sight, or this third eye, this ability to perceive extrasensorily beyond the senses. This is where we gain insight into these visions. This is where we hear things that are beyond that radio or that TV playing in the background. We hear things through the veils, through the interdimensions. We see things. We voyeur, clairvoyance beyond what is seen here. We can taste, we can smell, we can sense, we can feel. This is a power to perceive things that are not present to the senses. So there's a point where we exercise our senses. And if you've been following these last several 4DTs, we've been breaking down the chakras, going through the energy centers, and really gaining a deeper understanding of our energy dynamics, of our energy being. And as those faculties of all of those chakras become greater aligned, and it's an everyday thing. That's why we meditate every day. That's why we do our Reiki every day, or we practice going in nature, or whatever it is, to bring us back to center, bring us back in connection with source. Because our ability to perceive that which is beyond the senses, well, we don't do it to do that. Maybe we do, but we do it. And this is what happens, is that we learn how to hear beyond, to listen beyond the words. It's like when you have a conversation with someone and they're saying something, but you're feeling, you're seeing into them, and you're feeling that there's something much deeper going on. Your ability to perceive that through your second sight, through your extrasensory perception, is what is activated. Your ability then to see for this person the probable futures or the possible pasts for them are a part of this as well. Second sight becomes activated as all of these parts of us turn on and become aligned. As our, you know what I really feel? I feel that it's as we, as empaths, as psychics, as healers, as divine light beings, conscious beings on this earth, as we learn to use our powers, our senses, with honor, with humility, with reverence, to really hear, to really listen to others, to really see others, to really see ourselves, to be honest with ourselves about what tastes right and not, what smells correct and in alignment and what does not, what feels right and what does not. As we practice being one with the senses that we already have, the rudimentary 5 senses, and we practice all of those spiritual pursuits that help to align these abilities, I feel that's what gives rise to the 6th sense, to the 6th sense, to these extrasensory perceptions. And again, perception is the organization, identification, and interpretation of sensory information. So when you perceive something, your body mind is organizing. It sees color. It hears a sound or words. It gains an impression. Your body mind, to the ability and the experience that you've had up to that point, then organizes the information. It identifies, should I be afraid of this? Should I give this more of my attention? Is this just BS? Is this benign? Right? And it begins to interpret the sensory information you gain in order to represent and understand the presented information or the environment, right? So it can be specific to a question, specific to a person, or a place. All perception involves signals that go through the nervous system, which in turn result from physical or chemical stimulation of the sensory system. Now, I know that marijuana, is a sacred plant. And I have learned over the years to be with that when I'm guided to be with it in a very sacred way, whether I'm with friends or with myself. But to understand, and if you have ever partaked, or mushrooms, or anything that's going to alter your consciousness, that when you have that chemical stimulation, that your senses become activated. Your psychic senses become activated. That's why I know I've talked to some people, or for an example, you're going to a party, someone rolls a joint, and most of the people are partaking, and then someone out of the group says, oh, I am not hitting that. I get way too psychic. I get way too many downloads about information about people. It opens me up. No, thank you. So it's that kind of a thing, right? That we all have different sensitivities, and our ability to honor them, right, is a part of our practice at any given time. But the point here is that perception through the senses requires signals, vibrations of those things that you are perceiving to go through, those signals to go through your body, your nervous system, which in turn give you information, organize, identify, and interpret the information coming through. For example, vision involves light striking the retina of the eye. Smell is mediated by odor molecules. Hearing involves pressure waves. Perception is not only the passive receipt of these signals, but it's also shaped by the recipient's learning, memory, expectation, and attention. So you can go to 2 or 3 or 4 different psychics, people that profess to practice professionally ESP, that have their 6th sense turned on. And you can get 3 or 4 different stories, but you may find a common thread through all of them, where each individual may give you a slightly different fractal part of the puzzle, piece of the puzzle, part of the information or the painting. Yet you may find, especially if you're divinely guided to these individuals, that there will be a thread that they will all say, and I know this from my own experience from the way back then, but also other people who come to me for tarot readings. Once or twice, I've had people say, oh my gosh, okay, I've had 2 other people do my cards and this same thing keeps coming up. Or just in their own meditations, they'll be like, oh my God, that word totally came up in my meditation when I asked about this question, and then it gets a confirmation in the cards. So perception, let's do a little trick here. What do you see? What do you see here? And go ahead and type it in the comment box if you would. What do you see here? What do you see? And then we're going to go on to this one, which I really love. So we're just playing here for a moment with perception. The more that you play, though, with these concepts, with these notions, the more you exercise that musculature of being able to see and then see again, and then see again, and then see again, where you begin to see a greater, larger picture than what is at first perceived. So if you get something, type it in the comment box. What do you see? Or maybe you're afraid to type it. Do you see a vase, or do you see two faces facing each other? What a trip, huh? Do you see half of a profile facing you, or do you see half of a profile of someone looking away from you while looking at you? You know what I mean? Do you see their profile, or do you see them face on? I think it's just so. You see the hourglass, Tammy. Awesome. Thank you for commenting. But then afterwards, were you able to see the faces? I think it is just such a trip. So this is perception, right? We have two different people in the same place, and each person is seeing their own thing, whatever they perceive. Profile looking at you. Okay, cool. I love this. Thank you for your comments, Tammy. So let's get into this here. Clairvoyance. Okay, and I love these, right? When you go into Google or you go into Wikipedia, I love how everything is like the supposed, right? The supposed faculty of perceiving things or events in the future or beyond normal sensory contact. Have you had this experience before of being able to perceive things or events in the future where you see, you just feel it, you know it, but you also see it? It's going to be a good night. This is going to be a great event. This is going to be a fantastic coupling, this business, exchange coming together. This is going to be a great college for my child to go to. Or, you know what struck me? The other day I was at the supermarket, actually it was the evening, and it started raining. And out here in the desert, it doesn't rain that often. And sometimes when it does, it comes down like a monsoon. And it'll just be really hard and heavy, and then it'll go away. And I was in the supermarket, and I didn't know it had started raining. And I'm checking out, and the woman, she was a real woo woman. She had like big spiral iron earrings, and she was in her late 60s, but all these like necklaces with chakra crystals and all this stuff. And I had seen her there once or twice before, but she looks quote unquote normal besides all her, regalia, all her gear. And she looked at me and she said, "You drive safe now, you hear?" And I looked her in the eye and I said, "Oh, thank you, I will." And it was such a conscious, it wasn't just a comment, but it was a very conscious thing. And in a bubble of light, in the bubbles of my mind where I might go, I went outside and I realized it had been pissing rain. And I thought, wow, did this lady even know that it was raining? Did she have a clairvoyant moment from me whereby her divine guidance to channel through to me was just to simply say, drive safe, which would in turn allow me to be more conscious and aware going back out on the wet road, which provided then the acclamation of safety, of me being mindful, etc. But so in a way, I thought about her and I thought, did she have a clairvoyant moment for me? Perhaps seeing something. And as a way of reframing that, as a way of creating an alternate timeline and reality potential, spoke those divine words to me. Do you find yourself doing that? And perhaps you already do those kinds of things, yet are unaware. And as we develop our six senses, as those chakras, as all of our five senses become attuned and aligned, our sixth sense grows naturally. Our ability to hear, to see, to feel into the future, into the past, becomes with great ease. And again, you can always lower the volume, lower down the amount of information, right? Turn the knob, lower it down if you feel you're getting too much information, so you can navigate it appropriately and in alignment with what feels right for you. Clairvoyance. Do you see Ghosts. Have you ever seen a ghost? Have you ever seen into your future and where it did come to pass, or where it was an absolute truth? And voyance is a truth that is not something that we create with our minds. When you experience clairvoyance, you are being given. Look, it says sensory contact, beyond normal sensory contact, but you are being put into contact with that which is beyond the normal senses. You are being put in direct contact with a slide, a picture, or a mini movie of potential pertaining specifically to whatever the situation is that you might get a download about. Are you able to do that at will, or have you ever had the experience of simply having that ability to envision? You know, a dear friend of mine, the woman, Avine, that I would like to get on here, she's a medium, and I'd love to get her on to interview her here over the Google Hangouts. She read my tarot cards years ago when I was back in Ireland. It was 2012, and she had the most beautiful way of reading them. We pulled a few cards, and she placed her hands, cupped them over the cards, and she didn't even really look at the cards at all. She just placed her hand or her hands over them, and she started getting downloads. Clairvoyance, she was seeing things, seeing information, seeing visions to share with me, to tell me, to help guide me. Do you have that ability? Have you had that experience before? Clairaudience, again, the faculty of perceiving, as if by hearing what is inaudible, right? If you have children, if you have a husband, if you have a wife, a loved one, a little sister, a little brother, and there's a situation and you're in, and you go to get in the car, and you hear a voice that says, go back in the house and get the keys. Do you have that ability to hear? You're praying to an angel, and you say, dear angel, what is your divine guidance for me on this day? Do you hear the guidance? Maybe the angel says, surround yourself in white light. Do you hear that guidance? Do you hear what is generally inaudible to the masses? Can you tap in? Is it naturally abiding? For some of us, these qualities are just naturally abiding, or they open up over the years of our Kundalini experiences, over the years of our coming into greater enlightenment. Faculty of perceiving, as if hearing what is inaudible. Clairsentience, which means clear sensing. Clear sensing is the ability to feel the present, past or future, physical and emotional states of others without the use of the normal five senses. So without looking at pictures of someone's reality from the past, without talking to them, without gaining information on any level that would be normally thought of as 3D, that you are able to gain insight and the ability to feel into the present, the past, or the future, physical and emotional states of others without the use of your normal five senses. Now, this is a very powerful gift, and to be used with great wisdom, because if you have this ability to really download about all time and space for someone, both about their physical state and their emotional states, well, you want to be very mindful what you share, right? We want to practice a dear and divine discipline in honoring others and really asking our guides, what am I to share here? If you are a healer, if you are someone that just feels that you're really tapped in, and when you have tea with your friends, they come to you and they ask you something, and all of a sudden you're giving them these downloads. We are practicing mindfulness of what we are in fact sharing. some things can be really devastating. You know, the types of readers, and I'm going to bring you back over here now. You know, I have more, but I got so geeked out, and I think what we're going to do is we're going to do a whole separate one because I was going into ions. We're going to save that for a different day, and I'm going to come back over here. Because there's so much still to share. Blessings, Will. Thank you for joining us. There's so much still to share, and I want to make sure we thoroughly get through it all. And we still need to read our Course in Miracles, which is interesting because it does have to do with the ion thing. So I don't know. Are we going to go in? Are we going to go back? Are we going to not? I'm not really sure. But what I'm getting to do now is to go back over these notes that I wrote out for us, because ultimately all of this conversation is about, you know, our ability to discern. Do we feel that we have these senses? Do you want them? If you have them, how are you holding them? How are you handling them? And can you maintain a proper facilitation of them? Meaning, can you hold them? Can you channel them? Can you utilize them in a way that truly serves you or others for the highest good? So, clairaudience. Do you hear? Okay, so this is where we were talking earlier, where we were going to go into the voices in your head. Do you hear things, right? Inside your head or outside of your head, right? Do you hear voices in your head? And let me just check. I wonder why this is still on ion. Did we switch over? Maybe I didn't switch over yet. Let me go back into my little Google Hangout and just make sure. Oh, you're screen sharing. There we go. This should bring us back over now. I think. You are screen sharing. Am I screen sharing? Stop screen sharing. Aha, okay, good. Beautiful. So, I already talked to you a little bit about treasure enlightenment, right? When I had my big Kundalini craze and I fully was talking to the squirrels and hearing the trees and the leaves and everything talk to me. And this feels so different all of a sudden, even though it's not. It feels so different, like my head is getting cut off. Oh, maybe it's not. It's just the way I have the screen. Okay, clairaudience. Do you hear voices? Do you hear dead people? Do you talk to dead people? Have you ever had that experience of someone that you love passing away? Do you have a grandparent that has passed away, and have you been able to talk to them in your prayers, in your meditations later? And here I am playing around here. This is a big deal. Your ability to hear, clairaudience, right? To hear voices, to hear your higher self. Do you, when you pray for guidance, do you hear that guidance? Oh, you see? Look at, whoa, we're going down. Okay. So this is a thing, right? I remember ages ago, a student was like, how do you tell, now we're all crooked. I love this. How do you tell the difference between all the voices in your head? Like, what voice are you supposed to listen to? And that's a good question. And you know, I told you about my experience from my book, The Reiki Apprentice, where I took the LSD, and it was called a Gorbachev, by the way, and it was black, which should have told me a few things. But anyway, as I had mentioned as well, is that I didn't do a ceremony. I didn't do anything to surround myself in white light. I really was not in that awareness field yet to practice those things. The point is that later, when I had all of those voices in my head telling me to kill myself and just really whispering really awful, deathly, shadowy things to me, it was terrifying. And I know that individuals who have experienced levels of addiction with certain drugs would have these experiences of paranoia as well, right? Where, again, all of a sudden, your aura is like Swiss cheese. And so while there's love and light present everywhere, the information, the downloads, the entities, the whispers or the shouts from inappropriate discarnate entities or energies can be prevalent while your aura is wide open. So what I'm going to offer to you is understanding what I have learned, and now you will garner your own learning. What feels right to you? In my experience, right, what voices do we listen to? Especially if you feel that you have a million voices. And believe me, the more you meditate, the more you practice stillness, the more you practice just being present with all those voices and just letting them be, but also just getting into your breath, like almost ignoring them, but not ignoring them, honoring them, letting them be there, but just not really paying attention to them, paying attention, shifting your awareness, shifting where you're placing your faculties of mind, of awareness. That creates very powerful musculature for you to have a direct connect to God, direct connect to source, direct connect really ultimately to truth. So what is the truth? What voice is telling you the truth? If you are clairaudient, you're beginning to have these experiences of clairaudience where you're hearing more voices. It could be a male voice, a female voice. It could just be about the weather. It could be about a specific predicament. It could be about the government or the world issues. It could be about your body, your health, your healing, about a client, about anything random or benign. The voices, in my experience, what I'm going to share with you is the voices you hear inside your head. Now, this is a big one, because if you hear and you already have clairaudience, but you're like, how do I discern? How do I define? How do I align? How do I know what's the truth or not? Some checkpoints here for you. What is on the inside? What you hear inside your ear, inside your head, is the voice for God, is the Holy Spirit, is your higher self, is love, is truth. And what is outside generally is not. Now, with that, what I will say is that if one's aura, if one's energy field is defiled, is wide open, as mine was after taking that LSD, blasting my aura open, having cracks and openings and Swiss cheese holes, letting all sorts of energies in, when that is the reality in the 3D, then, again, remember, not only love and light forces are present, but all those that are the opposite of love and light can come in. And they can get inside your head. And you can clairaudient hear them inside of you as if they are the voice for God. And it can drive you crazy. The lines get blurred between what is within, what is the voice within, and what is the voice outside. So, again, in my experience, truth, love, voice for God, higher self, Holy Spirit, all of those divine, light, frequential voices that you hear clairaudiently will come from within. It will be the voice that you'll hear inside your body, inside your head, unless you have been through a situation that has left your aura open. It can be drugs, but it can also just be, it can be a car accident. It could be a dramatic, traumatic life experience that frazzles you, that shocks you, that takes you out of your body, you know, that kind of like jars you, and then you get to come back in. So as long as you feel that there is a sense that you are grounded, there's a sense that your energy is contained, and that your aura, for the most part, is sealed, is healed, then the voice for God, the voice of truth, you will hear on the inside of your head. And all other voices will take place on the outside when practicing clairaudience. Tracy says yes, and I'm sorry, Tammy. Pardon me, Tammy. you say yes. And I'm not sure what you're saying yes to because I've been rambling here. But if you want to type what you're agreeing to, I would be so interested, and I'm sure the community would be interested too. But so like that, this is just what I offer you in my experience. Okay? So all the peripheral voices, blah, 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 which is kind of like having the radio or the TV on in the background that's just always blah, 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 all the stuff, right? And that's always happening. And remember, the more you go from having 2 antennas to 100, to hundreds, to 1,000 or more thousands of antennas activated, whereby all of your clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairsentience, psychic, sixth sense, ESP, psychic, telepathic abilities become attuned, right? You become enabled to download more of the voice for God within you, but also more of all the scragglepuss stuff. That's a weird word. But like just all the scraggly superfluous. Like I remember one time we did a Reiki circle, and we did this exercise where we were doing healings from across the room. We just did like a 5-minute thing where we each agreed, like, okay, we sat in a circle and like, I'm going to send Reiki to you for 5 minutes. You're going to send Reiki to me just from a distance. And then we're going to give each other readings of what we got, if we got any downloads, right? Which is really practicing extrasensory perception in many different levels, just to see, did you hear anything? Did you see anything? Did you feel anything? These are all ESP, sixth sense related. Well, I remember these 2 gals, they worked on each other, and one of the ladies was like, oh, your energy feels warm and it feels nice, and I have to put this voice on. But, you know, it was just kind of really nice and benign. And she goes, but I'll tell you, when it came to your mind, it seemed like your mind was really unclear. And she told the lady, there's a lot of superfluous stuff you have going on. She says, I saw like a tornado. There was a lot of thoughts, and there was like a blender, and there was a dishwasher, and there were like all these random things going on around this woman's head. And it was just interesting energetically, the perceptuality of it, to think about that, because some people you see and you get an impression that they've got a very busy mind. And it's, again, if you don't get any of this stuff, it doesn't matter. These are just aptitudes, possibilities, probabilities, but they do become more probable the more you practice your spiritual pursuits, the more that you become enlightened, the more that you bridge heaven and earth, the more that you come into your true alignment and live the truth of the seeds within you and align with your purpose, the more you will be given light to light the way of your intuitive path, so that the messages you do receive, the feeling realization, the perceptions that you do receive are that of the light. And less do you have to do battle with like trying to figure out what's the light and what's the dark, and I got to protect myself. And remember the helmet, the astronaut helmet. If you ever feel like there's too many thoughts and I don't know how to deal with this, right? We can always turn the volume down appropriately. So take it down from 11 to like a 1.5 or a 2, and then you can always go back in. And I say go back in, meaning like in a moment of conscious clarity and intent, make it so, okay, that you can change the volume levels. You can turn up the bass if you like it juicy and bassy, which is how I like it. Now I lost my point of thought. The astronaut bubble. So that if you feel like, oh, I'm bombarded, there's so many thoughts, right? You put the bubble of light, the astronaut helmet on. It allows only thoughts of light, voices. Really, we're talking about the voices, clairaudience. It allows the voices of light in and your own internal voice of light out, so that it acts as a filter to filter out and to keep out from your mind field, from your antennas, from directly connecting and touching your sweet antennas with that dark, with that shadow, with that funk, that indistinct, sometimes sinister energy, which is what had happened to me when my aura was ripped open. I mean, there were fiends. There were like, I mean, talk about vampire energy. There were like beings feeding off of me because I was just so darn open. So, where are we going with this? Yes. So on the inside, hearing voices on the inside versus hearing voices on the outside. Clairaudience. So who is who, right? It's also important to understand who is who you're talking to. Who are all these darn voices? Oh, and Tammy just wrote back, thank you. Yes, I pray, yes, I've talked to a deceased person, my father-in-law, whom I've never met. I feel his presence occasionally. My husband jokes when we see a butterfly. That is my dad saying hi. That is so beautiful. Tammy, thank you for going deeper and sharing that with all of us. I'm like getting chills. That is so beautiful. And that's the way it works. Wow, who you've never met. You've never met your father-in-law, but you've talked to him and he is deceased and you feel his presence occasionally. That is so beautiful. And when you see a butterfly, that's your dad saying hi. That is so, so powerful. Thank you. So this is what I'm talking about, is that when we start to go beyond the veils of the dense reality of 3D, like how can someone who's dead, you know, show themselves as a butterfly to you in this life? How can someone who's dead that you've never met before, you know, how can you talk to them? Yes. Yes. Yes, you can, you know, as it serves the highest good. And often, when we're simply coming from a place of love and light, these aspects will come naturally. You may have powers, very powerful powers, but it doesn't mean you have to light them all up, plug in all the 1,000 lights of voltage on the Christmas tree at the same time. That can happen, and that's when you have your Kundalini experiences, and then you realize, like, let me just unplug a few of these strings of lights. I can still be hella bright or heaven a bright, but I don't need to be on all the time in this way. And you get to discern what's right for you. Like, I know for me, I'm really in a bubble of triple ring of Christ light, but I am really good at tracking people's tar body, at reading their shadow, at seeing through their BS, at getting to the point of the truth of them where there is shadow, where there is tar, and of helping them track that down to its point of inception. Now, it may sound fancy or frou-frou, or I don't know what it may sound like, right? Adventurous, which it is. Yet I realize that realm of work, that realm in this world in the 3D, even though I'm good at it, I'm good at you know, seeing people's shadow and dark side and working from that dark side level. But I realized after several years of doing that work specifically, I don't want to do that work. Not all the time, where I'm constantly dealing with people's dark sides and like evil, weird entities and weird manipulative. It's like, no. I got what I needed. I can fully be a master of my time and space, help hold space for others, usher through the healing as it's guided with specific clients and situations. But honey child, I do not need to be constantly like reading people's dark side and doing all the dark side evil, you know, dueling and all that stuff. I mean, that's for a book. And believe me, there's been plenty of scenarios that will go in future books. But it doesn't have to be how I live. So my point is that you can have these abilities, but you don't have to have them turned up to 100 million. You can turn the volume down, right? You can ask, like, higher self, I appreciate these qualities and these gifts, but let's go ahead and allow these qualities and these gifts to be activated to the point where I can maintain a sense of peace within myself, where I can maintain a sense of centered, that where I'm not disturbed, where I'm not taken from my center. You can put healthy boundaries on your abilities, right, to receive information. So just knowing that, and I feel like there's so many, so many tangents we're going on. So if I go way, way off, help me come back. So yes, who is who? Who are all these voices that you hear? Setting up boundaries, ask specifically for the voice of your higher self. So if you're going to go in, if you're going to practice clairaudience, you're going to practice opening up your ability to hear, right, the voice for God, to hear the voice of a deceased loved one, right? Always connect with your white light, with the white light. If there's an angel, a God, a source, the God, right? Whatever it is, like I'm connected I'm one with the mind of God. I surround myself with white light. And I ask my higher self, you create a healthy boundary. I ask my higher self to allow in only those voices that truly serve my path of well-being at this time, or that truly serve the path of this client's well-being at this time, or this situation. So you create a boundary, a filter through which that information to come through. Because again, remember, as your antennas grow and sprout and you become more psychic, more capable of just gathering and gaining information from everywhere, right? It's a responsibility. And so we ask, and I think this is the hub of this empathic grid, which I said at the very beginning of this presentation, that, you know, when I was a kid, we were all empaths. There just wasn't a word for it. And now it's like a thing where it's becoming recognized that youth, in a great part, you know, youth for a longer, what am I trying to say? That it feels that the youth that have been born of this last 20 plus years are with the capacity to maintain their ability to stay open longer. Whereas just a story in the past, perhaps, you know, the story like you're born, you're totally open, you're a sponge, and then you gather information up until you're 7 years old, and then you stop, right? And then you start forming your own personality and stuff. Like, that's a story that we've been taught, or that I've heard before. Yet it feels like with the empaths in these timelines, that they're coming in, they're open like sponges, but the sponge keeps absorbing. You know, it's a quicker picker-upper for sure. It keeps absorbing more and more information. And the path then is then for the empaths, and even if you're like me in your mid-40s, and you're like, I've been an empath all my life. They just didn't have that word for it when I was little. You know, you've been talking to dead people, seeing ghosts, having telepathic situations, hearing voices. Oh yeah, you plugged in, right? But we also can learn how to turn the volume down, how to surround ourselves with white light, how to cut cords, how to, by our word, the power of our word, consciously create the correct conditions for only that which serves the highest good to channel through. But you learn that over time, right? And if you're empathic, if you feel that way now, then, and this resonates, use it. Use these tools. They sound so rudimentary, or like you want something like, bazaar, or like with a big electric cloud. And believe me, honey, you will get your electric cloud when it's time. And your Kundalini and your enlightening experiences, and they'll be beautiful, because they won't be forced. They will be natural. And Will says, yes, I feel that as well about the young'uns, you know, is that they be sponges, you know, but we be sponges too. Yet, again, we learn, right? We learn how to dance with the voices in our head. We learn how to discern. And I think discernment is just such a powerful word, because it's not judging. We're not saying this voice is bad, this voice is good. We are simply honoring, what voice do I pay attention to? What voice truly serves the highest good now, my highest good, or the highest good of this situation? So again, who is who, what voice is what, set up your boundaries, ask specifically for the voice of your higher self, for the voice of Christ, the voice of God, the voice of Angel Uriel, or whatever, you know, Grand Master, or whatever you may be working with. Practice listening. So practice listening. You know, when people say, how do I get good at my psychic abilities, you know? And I know earlier I didn't mean to sound like I was down on practicing your psychic abilities. Yet I know through my own practices of trying to force things at times that we learn a humility. You know, I remember in my teens, I started meditating, like really meditating sincerely when I was 16. That's 30 years ago. And like right away, I was seeing auras. And I just thought like everybody saw auras. I was like, oh, there's the color. Oh, you're pink. Oh, you've got a little orange on your shoulders. Oh, you look very blue today, you know, or whatever it is. And it was a very natural thing. And I remember sitting at this meditation with my mother, who I have to say thank you to, because it was really, and of course it's all divine design, right? If we believe that we choose our parents or our environments, You know, when I grew up, all the books on the bookshelf were about auras and chakras and Shirley MacLaine adventures and, you know, metaphysics and parapsychology and reading tea leaves and like all this stuff. And my mother was always doing all of these practices since I was a youth, including LSD. Hi, Mom. It's true. It was the 60s and the 70s. Okay. So where was I going with all of that? Oh my God, you see, I cracked myself up and then I went off base. It'll come back. It'll come back. It will come back. I went so far off base now. I'm laughing. Okay, LSD, Mother. I have to say thank you because of just the divine sequence, the divine alignment of events that I was totally nourished. Oh, thank you. Thank you, angels, my higher self. See, when you affirm that it'll come back, it gives it a sacred space for it to come back if it's meant to. So the point is, so thank you, Mother, for always just being your true self that allowed me to be surrounded by just information and books and tapes and videos and cool things to help supplement and fortify and nourish my path. So I'm 16, I'm meditating. I remember being at this meditation with my mother and I'm sitting across from this lady and I'm like, wow, you've got some serious green around here and this pink right over here and this gold at the tip of your finger. And I'm telling her this whole thing. And she's like, oh my God, tell me more, tell me more. So I'm totally getting this clairvoyant in the present moment vision of this lady. I'm seeing through the veils. I'm telepathizing, right? I'm totally sixth sensing what's going on here. And I remember her going like, God, I wish I could see auras too. And this woman was like in her 30s at the time and I'm 16. And I remember thinking like, oh, you don't see it too? Like I didn't realize that not everyone saw these colors. But I did think it was interesting that she was kind of bummed that she didn't see the colors. And it kind of struck me where I was like, oh, is that what we're doing here? Like it struck me because what struck me, you Tuesday, is her wanting, is her, first of all, that other people didn't just naturally see these colors, but also that she was like, gosh darn, when am I going to see auras? And I was like, that just didn't resonate. It just didn't resonate. And then later down the line, learning with LSD and with other practices of medicine and psychic Kundalini experiences and all this stuff, realizing that you don't mess around, you don't force your third eye open, you don't, and actually, let's do a whole 4DT on that. Because Tool, the band Tool, who I love, I don't even think they're together anymore, but they had a song, I'm not sure if it was the title of the song, but it was it was the main theme, and it was called Prying with a P, Prying Open Your Third Eye. Prying open my third eye. And we get to be very mindful of that. But again, that's a whole other conversation. But that's where I felt that she was going of like, I wish I had that power. Like, give me that power right now. And it just didn't, I was like, it kind of felt funky. So we get to be mindful. We get to discern what we ask for, right? And how much of it we're asking for. And also understanding that it's a great responsibility to have the activation of these. And April says, hello. Oh, Alba M. Hi, Mom. LOL. I don't get that. Oh. You're not saying hello, Mom, to Alba. You're saying hi, Mom. LOL. Blessings. Yes, darling April. And Alba, hello and welcome. Thank you for being here. So let's keep going. Yes, okay, so listening. How did I get off on the whole thing? Listening is such a big deal because our ability to listen is the throat chakra, right? We often think of the throat chakra as being our ability to speak and communicate our truth with clarity and express it, and absolutely it is. It is also about our ability to listen, which is different from hearing, right? What you hear someone say, we did a little bit of this example earlier, what you hear people say could be different from what you get when you really listen, when you feel, when you listen with your feelings, right? That's the activated throat chakra, where you're getting a full report. What the person is saying, what you hear from their voice is like one fractal. But when you listen, you're getting like these other fractals that create a greater whole of information for you. So your ability to listen is important when practicing. Oh yes, so again, the practice, right, of strengthening these abilities is great, is something you may be guided to do. Yet again, I'm just urging, you know, mindfulness and awareness and honor and reverence and knowing that be mindful what you ask for. Because again, we said this at the very beginning of this presentation, is that at the deeper substrata of your being, you may be ready to be fully psychic. And all you have to do is have that prayer, have that wish, and ask for it. And subconsciously, unconsciously, you may not even know how ready your body-mind continuum, your vehicle, is capable and ready to activate and to put that into motion. And so it could be like, you know, stepping on the gas and you're going like, whoa, you know, and you might think you're not ready for it, but we always are. Whatever we ask for, if it comes to be, there's a part of us that is ready to receive it or that is ready to experience the lesson, the teaching, the medicine of that experience. So your throat and your third eye, very important for clairaudience, to pick up those finer vibrations, to hear, right? The heart must be open for the higher language to filter through. Prying open the third eye without heart can draw unsavory voices. So again, prying open the third eye and just being like, you know, and this is it. I mean, it kind of sounds like a weird movie, right? Or like a Harry Potter or something, you know, and I really don't know if it does sound like that. But it's that sort of sense of like, I want my psychic abilities turned on and I want them turned on now. You know, we don't do that around here. At 4D Trinity, we're humble, we're patient. You know, you can practice exercising the abilities that you have and creating greater clarity so that that which comes through is of the higher light. Like I was just reading, when the heart is open, then the language of light that you will be hearing and sensing through your clairaudience ability to perceive words, voices, songs, whatever it is that you hear, either inside your head or outside of your head, will become strengthened in the light. When we force and we pry open the third eye and we force this ability, then we are creating a space through which all sorts of beings and entities, yes, those of light, but also those that are not of light, we are creating a welcome for those energies. And then, depending on our ability to say, oh, oops, no, thank you, here's the door, goodbye, or to close, to seal up our aura so that these energies don't interpenetrate, right? That's a whole other lesson in the story. So be mindful what you ask for and always opening the heart, attuning to the heart. So remember, before we go on, the point that I wanted to share with you in my experience is that if there are voices inside your head, well, even before we go here, remember, if you are practicing clairaudience, practicing hearing, and you can do this with a friend, you know, you can do this with nature. This actually happens naturally with nature. Anytime I go out in nature, especially alone, and I mean really all the time, but especially early morning or in the evening, like right when the sun comes up, which is more rare, honestly, for me. I'm usually there when the sun is going down. It does happen from time to time. Oh my goodness. And when we are silent and sitting our butt, your root chakra, your spine on the earth, on the dirt, and just chilling and being still. And you can meditate on purpose, but you can just be there. And you will, even now, me just putting myself there in my intention, I feel like I'm there. But when you just sit there with Mother Nature, whoo, she's just talking. And you know what? She's just speaking in language of love and of light. So many beautiful bits of information refracted and reflected to you. So that's one way to practice clairaudience, is to actually have a conversation with the plants, with your plants in your garden. If you don't have a place to go and go hiking or out somewhere, you know, in an outside neutral environment that is peaceful, you can start having clairaudient conversations with your plants. And believe me, they will start talking to you. I remember last week, I was in a real grumpy mood. I hadn't got a lot of sleep. And there's, you know, I live in the desert, and we have umbrellas outside, and some days, if it's over 120, it just takes like 1 hour of that piercing dry heat to frazzle every plant in the yard. And so there's this constant, like, moving all the plants to the shade and to the shady part of the house. And it's like, on this one day, it pissed me off, and I was like, ugh! And there's these 3 big plants that no matter like where you pull and where you put them and how much you water them, they just always like dry out in the summer. And I've been here for 3 years with these plants, and they were here when I got here, and it's a part of my responsibility to take care of them. And a part of me is like, man, these gosh darn plants. Well, I've learned to love them over the years, yet they got frazzled, and I had to go out there and move them. And I remember I was grumpy, and I was like, God, I actually said, bubble of light, the word hate, which is generally not in my vocabulary. Like, I don't speak that over my life, over my body, over anything anymore. I used to all the time. And when I do, it's usually as a story, as I'm telling now, to share something. So it was very bizarre, because this is how like Rumpelstiltskin I was, is I was like moving these heavy things, and I was like, God, I just hate you. I hate these plants. I hate having this responsibility. And I knew, like, and this is so not like me. This is not like I go around speaking in that way. But something had concuxed. I was just in a funk in that moment, and I let it out. And honestly, things had been building up to that moment. And I used those plants, right, as a means to like, bleh, to get it all out. I come in the house, and I was like, oh my God. And I instantly was like, oh, those poor plants. I'm so sorry. I can't. But I was still kind of pissed off. So I was like, okay, remember to apologize to the plants later. I put it on the list. Well, don't you know it? I go out later that night, and I sat there, and there was 3 specific, and I call them the Pointer Sisters. And I sat there, and I was like, you know what, sisters? I'm so sorry. And I had a conversation. Okay, so remember, we're all talking about clairaudience here, right? I had this conversation with them, and I was like, I apologize with all of my heart and soul. You know I don't really hate you. That was like a moment, and it's not like me, and I'm sorry, and I place love here, and, you know, let's just start fresh. I love you, and I appreciate the beauty and, you know, the love that you create here, the frequency you create here in the yard, and I bless you, and I thank you. So they were like, you know what? It's okay. And so we had this whole conversation, and they were like, it's okay. Thank you for saying that. We knew you were in a bad mood. And so it was like a friend. Like, we were all just like, oh, okay, it's all good. And then last night I'm out there. And then, but then once you start talking to the plants, right, be careful what you ask for, because then they're all like, water us, water us. And I had decided in my head that I was not going to water last night. I was feeling lazy. I had to do prep for the show and a few other things. And I was like, I'll do it in the morning. But it was a hot day yesterday out here in the desert. And they were like, water, water, water. And then like all the plants in the yard were like, please, we are, and I had a glass of water out there while I'm in the yard looking at all the plants. And I took a drink of water, and they're like, please, we want that. And so this is what I'm saying is like clairaudience is, it's like I had an audience, and I was the audience, right? I was like having these conversations, and it's as simple as that. You know, you want a mystical life? Talk to your plants. Talk to your pets. Ooh, that's another one. So it's interesting, right? Being mindful what we ask for, because it's there. It's all there. And remember, prying open the third eye versus, you know, creating practices that will allow the opening to happen naturally versus like, I want to see auras, and I want to see them now, and I will do anything. I will burn any candle. I will say any spell in order to make it so. We don't do that here at 4D Trinity. I, as Tuesday May Thomas, do not practice a force of a will to any person, place, thing, or being. Even if it's something that I'm really excited about experiencing, there is always the cosmic clause for the highest good, for my highest good, for the highest good of all. And I pray you understand that. So we are going to move on now. Clairvoyance. Okay, clairvoyance, past, seeing into the past, into the present, into the future. clairvoyantly? Have you experienced clairvoyance? Now, I know for me, I've had these experiences, you know, and if you practice healing, you may have this experience where I know for me, generally, when I pass a Reiki attunement, I'm sharing a Reiki healing. Sometimes there's nothing, and we honor that. But sometimes you get serious downloads, clairvoyant downloads, where you get visions and visions and visions of like, wow. And then the person comes to, and you get to ask your higher self, what from this vision for the highest good am I to share with this individual that will truly serve their path? Because not everything you get is going to be necessarily something that needs to be shown, especially if it's something like if you see a car accident, you want to be very careful of what you share with the individual. And you can say, was that for me? Was that for them? Higher self? How should I share this? Should I share this at all? Just channel through me the correct words so that I can, in the best way, serve this person's path, because we can get freaked out. We can freak other people out. So always with honor and reverence, right, from these messages, and knowing that we can filter, we can distill them into a fortifying little parcel that the individual, a friend, a family member, a client can then receive and take nutrients from that that will serve their path, right? We don't ever want to freak people out. Like, I very rarely go, you know, I don't go to the palm reader people anymore. What I mean is like when the hand is the neon hand in the window, tarot card people, I've been to them millions of times throughout my life. I'm very, very mindful. I will go when I am divinely guided by my higher self to receive a psychic download, a palm reading or a tarot reading. The point with this is that you will receive information. You do receive information constantly, right? As a clairvoyant, you are constantly seeing, just like the voices in your head or around your head, you are constantly seeing possible scenarios. Now, some of this is just your imagination, is just your mind creating thought forms, right, that are visual. But now, in a sense where you are sharing a healing, receiving a healing in the presence of someone or out in nature or in a situation where you suddenly get like a very clear picture of something, right? That's different. Well, they're the same, but it's more pronounced in that this is definitely this, you're having a clairvoyant moment. You're getting a download, a clear download of a vision of an event, a situation that could come to pass. And what happens is as your psychic abilities bump up and align, you will get more and more and more of these for yourself, for your life, and for others. And it's a beautiful thing because you come to realize that you get these snapshots. I get them sometimes little vignettes, like little movies, but often I'll just get snapshot flashes. And I'll know, like I'll ask a question and I won't even be aware that I'm even asking it. And then I'll realize that I did, like, okay, I have to go to the DMV. Do I go today or tomorrow? And I'll get a picture or I'll hear a voice, right? The more that you have this conversation with the body of the universe, this is also a way to activate your psychic, ESP, extrasensory abilities to perceive, to have communion, and to communicate on a higher level with your environment. Is to ask, right? Ask your higher self, you know, show me, is today a good day to take the kids to the park? Is today a good day to sign those papers? Is today a good day to go to the doctor? Is today a good day to work, or should I relax? Is today a good day, you know, whatever it is, and be on standby to hear or to see an impression. So clairvoyance is where you are seeing. You get a really clear picture, or again, a little movie vignette of a scenario that will be filled with guidance of what is to offer you one path or another, given any certain scenario or question or situation. Now, we can cultivate greater clairvoyance and our ability to see past, present, future, right? And this comes naturally again with vision questing, whether you are sober, completely sober, playing the drum, using pranayama breathing techniques. You're going to the mountain, you're doing a mushroom ceremony, you're doing a peyote ceremony, an ayahuasca ceremony, whatever it might be. But all of these abilities to vision, you will be shown visions for the most part. Well, I won't guarantee anything, but when you go on a sacred vision quest, you will receive visions. You will be clairvoyant in that time, where you will receive downloads of images, of pictures, of movies. Now, in your meditations and your dreams as well, we are shown so much information in our dreams. And really, we are told that dreams, we're told a lot about dreams, right? That on one hand, there's a belief that you're not supposed to dream at all. And on another hand, that, right, and that if you're dreaming, you're just working out all your subconscious thoughts and all the superfluous, stuff going on in your mind, that when you're dreaming, it's like your brain like putting pictures to the thoughts and those subconscious issues sort of working themselves out while we dream. Yet really, on another level, multidimensionally, you are clairvoyantly journeying through infinite timelines, right? I know we had a conversation recently, Will, where you were saying you were flying, You were clairvoyantly envisioning and clairsentiently feeling in the now moment that realization, the feeling realization of weightlessness, of levitation, beyond the gravity, the duality of this dimension. You were flying. And now I'm putting words in your mouth, right? But this is how I'm perceiving what you had shared with me, is that you were flying. And so on a level, you were clairvoyantly perceiving a very different reality than when you woke up later. So in dreams, we can have clairvoyant insight into things and be shown information, okay? So let me just see. Dreams have been off the hook. Dreams have been off the hook. Yes, you've been saying. Sobriety is so interesting in that way. Okay, so we can get clairvoyant information when we're just having a cup of coffee with a friend. I have a feeling about that job for you. That guy that you're going to be dating, I get a weird funky thing about him or her or whatever it might be, right? You're doing a Reiki healing on someone. You might get all these downloads, clairvoyant, get these pictures, these images of like, whoa, you were totally, like, I know one that stands out in my head is like, sometimes they just come like that. And sometimes there's nothing, and that's okay too. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong. But it's like, I remember one time it's like, oh my gosh, the person came back and drank some water and all that. And it was like, dude, you were like standing at the bow of a boat and there were ocean waves crashing and you were standing like a captain at the front of the ship and like the sunset was going down, like the sky was like a pink orange and so there's like all of these metaphors, which then afterwards you can break down almost like as if you are a clairvoyant dictionary, a dream dictionary, a cipher, right, dictionary. And you're like, okay, so the boat represents you, the water represents your emotional state of being, the sky, the colors in the sky represent this, and you were standing on the boat like this, so this means you are in a place of mastery in your life, the boat is chugging, you can start to identify and break down the pictures that you receive. Now, we think about these TV shows, and I don't watch them, but I've been in the presence of people watching them, so I know they exist. Those CSI-ish kind of shows where, wasn't there one actually called Medium or something? But where there's like a crime scene and like the psychic gal goes in there and, or the guy, and they just like, they energetically scan the place and they get pictures and information. And didn't one of our cards in our presentation talk about this? Where, 2D inanimate objects, a couch, the walls of a home, a car, like anything, it has information. It has information to share with us. And when you are psychic, when you have your sixth sense activated, you will pick up information from places, right? And I know this is a big thing with house clearing. I used to do house clearing and I don't do it anymore. It's like that tar body tracking. It's like you can have gifts and you can be really good at doing a lot of things, but it doesn't mean you have to do them all. when you do house clearing, the whole house is talking to you. You know, 2D, excuse me, objects absorb information, absorb memory, absorb music, sounds, words, pictures, visions. You can just go into a place and depending on your aptitude, get a whole download. You can get clairvoyant visions and pictures of what happened in this room, what happened in the yard. Did someone die here? You know, or there was a good time over here, whatever it might be. You know, statues in a cemetery. I grew up in Ireland and it's all this all the time. You're on a bus in Ireland every time, and I think it's just the Catholics, right? But every time the bus goes by a church, which is like every 2 blocks in Ireland, everyone who's Catholic on the bus does the sign of the cross, like everyone, like at the same time, just driving past a church. Okay, so I'm going off the subject, but like in those cemeteries, there's a lot of, you know, statues of the Mother Mary or of Christ or whatever, and people pray to the statues. People pray to those statues. People cry to those statues. There's all sorts of emotion, all sorts of prayers, information put in to those statues. Same thing like the house where you are. That's why we burn the sage. We ring the bell. We do whatever. We put the crystals or sprinkled salt, whatever it is, to clear the energy, to cleanse it, to reset, to hit the reset button so that love and light is, we come back to that in our consciousness, but also we place that in the walls of the space where we are and we say love and light is the truth, reset, and so it is. The place that you reside holds all the memories, every conversation you've had with your family, your children, your loved ones, anyone on the phone, the God phone, whatever it might be, that's all in the walls. And you see when you do a house clearing, and why am I talking about it? But well, I guess we're talking about clairvoyance, right? But when you do that house clearing, it's like you're getting all this information and you're clearing that which is inharmonious, which does not resonate with the true reset of that space. So just to bring it back to clairvoyance, all I'm saying is that all things have energy. Oh, we're not talking about clairvoyance. We're talking about, yes, we are. We're talking about clairvoyance. Claire this and Claire that. Okay. Oh, so check this out. Years ago when I worked at the Bodhi Tree, and if you've read my book, The Reiki Apprentice, you know that so earlier I was talking about that chapter, Open Aura. I had taken the LSD, realized that my aura's just ripped open, having all of these. So before I get depressed and have all those voices of like, kill yourself in my head, before all that happens, I have a very powerful experience of paralysis, which I call the gray, in which interdimensional beings who were also gray came. And it wasn't my first time to have exchanges with them. Why am I telling you this? Clairvoyance. Oh, well, remember, I know some of you have read the book. Remember, I get to the point where I'm able to move and I freak out and I pick up the phone and I international dial on my little dial calling card, the Bodhi Tree bookstore, which I talked about earlier. My friend Trina in the book, her name is Trina, picks up the phone and it was like, they're here, you know, basically. She had had loads of experiences with all of these interdimensional beings and holding space. And anyway, she helped me to create the correct conditions to seal up the energy of the place. It's a riveting chapter. You have to read it in my book, The Reiki Apprentice. It's powerful. Now, why am I talking about this? Clairvoyance, clairvoyance, clairvoyance. Why am I talking about this? There was totally a point. Clairvoyance. Oh, so that same gal talking about clairvoyance, very psychic, lovely sister. I'll have to go visit her. She's in Maui, though, and we know about me in Maui, or maybe you don't. But so I remember she was honing her psychic skills, and this is back in '96 when I worked at the bookstore, before I went on my backpacking adventures in the Reiki Apprentice. And she said, I'm practicing my psychic clairvoyant abilities. Can I practice with you? And I said, yes. See, and that, even just that little conversation is a very appropriate way to set up the correct conditions for a higher exchange to happen, where you ask someone permission. You're not just like, I'm going to pry into your third eye, which I'll give you an example of that after this little story. Clairvoyance, right? And I said, yes. She goes, okay, the way I do it is I'm going to ask you for something that has your energy on it, like a ring, a bracelet, something that you use often or that you carry often. And I reached into my pocket and I had my keychain, and it had like a funky little green, I don't know, a little thing. You know how you have little dingleberry goofy things you can make as your keychains? It had something as well as the keys on it. And she said, perfect. She took them, she held them to her third eye, and there was a few moments of silence. We both sat and we breathed. She started getting all these downloads about me being in the desert with this blonde guy who had hair to here. And she totally described this guy. I did not know who this was. I really, at that point of my life, was rarely spending time in the desert, although my grandma lived here. But like, she was like, no, you're like out in the desert, which I hadn't done at that point of my life yet. And she gives me all these downloads. Well, about 2 or 3 months later, I meet this guy with the blonde hair. I end up dating him. Whole other story in itself. Everything she said, she had clairvoyantly seen into the future by using an item that had my energy on it. She was using that as a medium to go beyond the veils, to tap in. And she had asked my permission, and I said yes, and the information she gave was true. And it was current. Like within those couple of months, I meet this guy. We dated for, I don't know, 6 months. You know, it was right before I went off on my Reiki apprentice adventure, so it wasn't that long. But also, unbeknownst to me, we ended up with 10 other people going to Joshua Tree, which now I live out here in the desert. But we ended up driving to Joshua Tree with like a whole wrangle of people. And this is before, you know, now they have like, now, I don't know, things are different now. There's like more cameras and stuff everywhere, drones and things. But back then, 96, which is 2006, 2016, 20 plus years ago, we had this huge caravan with all these supplies. We drive in really deep into JT, Joshua Tree, and then we turn off the main road and go in miles and miles, way deep off track. I don't even know if you could do that anymore. But anyway, we ended up being there for days and days. It was an incredible adventure. But this is what she saw with the keys, clairvoyance. So this is a way that you can practice, if you want to practice those skills, right, with a friend, with a loved one. I mean, I know me and Will, we've even done this where we're like, you know, and I've done this with friends too, and you've probably done too, where you're like, okay, what number am I thinking? Okay, what color am I thinking? You know, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's much more profound than that. Or like the other day, I went over to Will's house, and it's interesting because we were talking about this, you know, has this happened to you before? I go over and I sit down, and like within the first couple minutes I'm there, I get a snapshot flash of a movie I've seen several years ago. And I can't even remember the name of the movie, but I know that I've seen it, and I get this flash in my mind. For whatever reason, I don't even know. We're talking and talking. Like an hour later, he says, hey, I just saw the movie, what was it called? Atlas Cloud Atlas. And I was like, there it is. That's exactly it. The flash that I had in my mind clairvoyantly, which was just benign, and it was just a floater. It was just a floater out there. But as soon as I came into his world, where in his mind, he had just seen this movie, and there were snapshots of that movie in his mind field, one of those snapshots came into my mind field or activated the memory in my mind of that movie, and I got a flash of it. Unbeknownst to me why I got it, it seemed benign. It didn't seem like anything I was supposed to pay attention to, but then go and find out that he had just seen that movie. So have these things happen to you before, where you realize, you get a hit, we'll call it a hit, right? You get a bump on your radar, your psychic radar, and then you realize like, oh, 1 + 1 = 2. That totally makes sense. It's connected because there's a reason why I'm thinking that thought. And, you know, as we get more and more sensitive and explore this path, we get to really, with mastery, discern what is your energy and what is someone else's energy. Because it's one thing when it's a benign, it's one thing when it's a benign, like, snapshot of a movie like that, and you're in a friend's presence, and you're like, oh my God, totally, da, da, da. But it's another thing when you're in the presence of someone and you get like a weird sexual energy or something. Then you're like, is that mine? Is that coming from my root fears of my subconscious, and this person's presence is bringing them up? Or is it really them, like, you know, trying to do some weird, like seeing the sexual energy in me or trying to pick up on my sexual energy, and that's what I'm picking up on. And it's such a labyrinth. But you know, the more we explore it with sincerity and with a connection to divine source, the more we can intuit with clarity and with honor and with truth and make our way through what is the truth and what is not the truth. Oh my God, that reminds me, we still got to read from here. So, clairvoyance. So sometimes you just get a download, right? Sometimes you just see into people, and to the degree that they show you who they are is the degree that you'll be able to read them. If you're supposed to read them at all, you know? And you see, you know, often what I will see for people when I do the cards, I do healing, or if I see things at all, it's possible realities. You know, it's like this, things are lined up energetically for this scenario to take place if you should be guided, if you should be drawn in that way. And then, so sometimes you just get a download, you know, whether it's about a first date, a job interview, apartment hunting, you get a vision, you voyeur, you see, right, a snapshot of what possible realities are. Now, safe practices, as with all of these, is to create a space of white light. Know that white light is the truth. Call in your angels, your guides, your higher self, and ask to be shown by your higher self. So if you're going in to practice, right, clairvoyance, say with a friend, say you are going to do the number game of like, okay, what number am I thinking? You know, and you're clairvoyantly sending it out, you know, putting it out there, and your friend over there is like clairvoyantly, whether they're right there on the couch or they're 3,000 miles away, clairvoyantly, you know, practicing, like seeing that number, right? Call in the white light, call in your angels, ask your higher self to help do the work in those ethereal planes for you so that you know who you're putting to work and you know where that information is channeling through. It's very, very important, because remember, be mindful what you ask for. If you all of a sudden want to have your third eye pried open and have all of these psychic senses, but there's no rudimentary experience, maturity, and wisdom to ground them step by step, then it's a bit of a roller coaster as you open up. So safe practices, white light, call in your angels, ask your higher self to show you what truly serves your highest good. If you're practicing clairvoyance for someone else, higher self, truly show me what will serve their highest good and what serves the highest good of all. And in that way, whatever comes through will always be in attunement and alignment with that. And so it is. So conscious, I have some extra notes here. Conscious manifestation, visualization versus clairvoyance. Multiple possible realities. So there is a part of us, so clairvoyance is that feminine, is that receiving, right? It's not where you go out and you pierce the veils and you're gonna see something because you're gonna make yourself see it. It's about being receptive, intuitive, and open to those divine visions, to those divine pictures that come to you, right? So it's not about you visualizing, practicing with your imagination. It's about you having no imagination in a way and really not practicing doing anything, but practicing being present, aware, and just open for the highest good, for what pictures will serve you. Divine higher self, what pictures will clairvoyantly serve me on this day? You ask the question, and then you allow yourself to be present through the day. And then as you get a divine download, a picture, a little mini movie in your mind's eye, I asked for this earlier. Thank you, higher self. You know, and most likely it will come as something that will either be benign, just to like give you justification of like, oh, that's that muscle working, or it might have some divine guidance with it too. So how do you know, right? When you get a clairvoyant vision, when you get a clairsentient, that feeling, right? A clairaudience, when you hear the voice, how do you know it's truth or not? Well, we always say you know the truth by how it feels. How do you feel? When you see that vision, does it give you the chills? Do you know that like you're supposed to pay attention and not go to that party because you just have these like you have the vision of like something really weird or disruptive and and the feeling you get in your gut and your intuition, your clairsentience, is just like guiding you. I'm supposed to go to that party tonight. Like you have a feeling, and that feeling is guiding you. You know, equally so, it can have that guidance of bringing that feeling realization of like, this feels so good. When I think of you, when I think of that person, that situation, I get excited and it feels good. When I get a vision of my possible future, I clairvoyantly jump through timelines and go into this possible scenario. It feels so good. When I clairvoyantly jump and go into this scenario where I'm in a couple with these people or do this workshop or go to this yoga thing or whatever it might be, and the feeling is weird, pay attention to that. Why is it weird, higher self? Show me more information to help me discern with greater clarity and light what I am supposed to know about the situation now. Please and thank you. You ask, you will be shown. Ask and it is given. Ask and it is shown. And if it is not shown and if it is not given, that just means that you are not to know any information regarding that at that time. You can always ask again later. So, there is a way as well we can actively work, right, with our clairvoyance. If you are very clairvoyant and you get a lot of downloads, right, you're a healer, or in this way you work with a lot of individuals, and it feels appropriate for you to work actively with light. As you work with these individuals and you get these visions of things that have happened in their past, you perceive a lot of trauma, a lot of a heartache, a lot of pain or whatever. As it serves the highest good, always being the cosmic clause, because remember, we're not here to fix other people. We're not here to change the world. And this is what I teach. You may disagree, but I'm not here to change you. I'm not here to fix you, right? I'm just here to share the teachings and to live a beautiful, juicy, passionate life. That's what I'm here to do, to share these amazing teachings that have changed my life, right? All in the name of love and light. As you perceive information, visions, clairvoyantly about an individual, person, place, or thing, and you are guided to work there, you simply place love there or light there to do the work. So you're healing, you're sharing, you're feeling, you're being with someone, and you get this download, whether it's a clairvoyant, a picture, you get a download, and it's an audio, right? Clairaudience, you hear a conversation between them and their husband. You hear a conversation between something, and you're like, whoa, this is deep. Am I supposed to do anything with this, higher self? Your higher self could go, nope, you're just hearing, you're just clairaudienting, just let it go. You can turn the volume up or down. Okay, never mind. You get something and you're like, whoa, am I supposed to do something? And your higher self is, yes, you can share this information with this individual and it can serve them at this time. Whether you're a friend having coffee, you're doing a tarot reading for someone, or you're an energy healer, a Reiki healer, and you get something, right? If they're on the table and you're working on them and you feel, you see, you hear like a traumatic bump from their timeline come up, and you see a vision or a picture of something that has happened to this person while you're working on them. Number one, the healing that you're sharing with them is already doing the work with them. And especially if you are a healer that is really allowing love to channel through, you're not healing them, but you're creating the correct conditions and holding space so that their body, mind, system, vehicle can heal itself to its optimum ability, which is what I teach, what we share here, right? Then it's already happening. Yet if you're guided to do more, to be active as you clairvoyantly receive downloads, what I'm sharing with you is that as you see that picture of them as a child crying, or that situation where it doesn't feel, where it feels traumatic, or where there was violence, you can simply place love there. You can see that vision and you can I place love there. You simply say, I place love there. I place light there. And love and light will help to recreate the past, will help to recreate the memory for that person for the highest good, because we are never forcing a will, so that that memory of the past clairvoyantly can be healed as you see it as the healer, so that your ability to hold space for them as a more healed being becomes greater, but also as that schematic of memory within them, held within them in their DNA, is ready to change and shift to the level that you are placing love and light there. And it's not really to the level that you're placing love and light there, but in regard to the love and light that is placed there, their ability to come up and be healed, to meet that love and light, will help reflect that, so that as they come out of the healing, they will not have the heaviness and the bondage towards those past things as they did before. I pray and I affirm that you get that. Okay. So, psychometric, baby. All right. So we're almost winding down here. Clairsentience, right? Pure knowing. I call clairsentience pure. Now, pure being the operative word, pure knowing. It's the truth. You feel it in your bones, right? There's certain timelines are more formed than others, or more rooted. They have more potential to move, shift, to be the outcome than others through, though you never know what will be until it is. So it's clairsentience is your ability to purely know, which is beyond perceiving. Your ability to purely know. I just know it. I can't tell you how I know it. I just know that we're not supposed to do business with this man. I just know that she's the right woman for you. I just know that a positive outcome is going to come to that audition you're going for. I just know I'm going to be paying my rent this month before it's due. I just know that this is the truth in my heart. I just know that you will live longer than the doctor's diagnosis gave you. You know, there's a pure knowing, which is different from thinking, right? Knowing is different from perception, which I think is interesting, which I realize now with the ion thing, we're going to have to do that next week, or we're going to have to conjoin. There was more in the presentation we did, but I felt like, again, we're going to be here for like 4 or 6 hours. And not that there's anything wrong with that. Yet I feel that to honor it correctly would be to even get a little more organized with it and to share it with you at another time. That aside, clairsentience, pure knowing. It's when you know without a shadow of a doubt. When you know what you know. And even if all you know is that love is the truth. That's, hey, right? I've said this at almost every recording I've done in the past weeks. There's a preacher that I listen to, Dave Evans, and he says, you know, what does he say? What does he say? Oh my God, isn't it funny? Because I had it written on my bathroom mirror in erasable marker for like months, and I just cleaned my mirrors, and now I can't remember it. Having faith is acting like God is telling the truth. So whatever thing you define as God, and remember God on the God phone said that God is simply the feeling realization of oneness, that God does not have a sex, does not have a gender, does not have genitalia, but it is a feeling realization of oneness, of unity consciousness. So, pure knowing, beyond perception. When you have that knowing of that is just a knowing. I mean, how often do you have that? That's your intuition. That's your extrasensory perception. That's your clairsentience, which is all of your senses, all of your sixth sense, everything heightened and like in alignment so powerfully that it is just a yes. It is a divine knowing. Now, how does this happen? There are certain timelines. There are certain grids that are more formed, right? In the invisible realm, we've talked about the grids before. We won't go into it too deeply, but we know and we understand that there is a matrix of collective consciousness here that connects us all. That connects us all through our thoughts, our actions, our words and deeds, through vibration, through frequency. The more energy that is given to certain grids, to certain threads in this matrix, the more stable or unstable, the more hardy, the more bigger that they become. And as your psychic senses become bigger, your ability to sense and perceive them become greater. And like when we read tarot cards, that's all we're doing. When we do a psychic reading for someone, that's all we're doing is the cards are just revealing, or your intuitive senses Your sixth sense is just perceiving those aspects that are paramount, that where the grids have become bundled and strengthened to a certain degree or not, whether in the way of fortune or lack, whether in the way of health, of healing, or of illness, whether in the way of positivity or negativity. So certain timelines are more formed than others. And this is what gives us a sense of certainty. How do you know that? How can you feel that? How can you tell that? It's not you telling it. It's the grid telling you what's up. And it's your capacity to be able to simply be open, attune, and align to the information. It's like reading, it's like, remember in math, those bar charts where there'd be a bar and it'd be like, this percentage of is higher than this percentage of whatever is lower, or this pie, you know, and there's half of the pie is here and half of the pie is there. Well, that's what you're doing clairsentiently when you are feeling with that pure knowing. It's that you are energetically reading the pie charts. You are energetically reading the bar graphs of collective consciousness. And downloading and able to decipher and speak those words, put it into words, or have just a very clear feeling about it, whatever it is. So we're going to wrap up here, and I did have a few exercises for you. You know, one thing I know for me that really, that I practiced and I didn't even know that it was doing it, is candle gazing. So if you seek to strengthen your ESP abilities, your extrasensory abilities, remember, it is always first about how well are you attuning and aligning with the natural 5 sense abilities that you already have. Not just to see, but to really vision. So not just to look at what appears to be in front of you, but to see through the veils, with these eyes, with this eye. Not just to feel with your hands, through touch, how something feels, but to feel. It could look beautiful, it could be soft to the touch, but how does it feel on the inside? You can hear someone talking through the sense of your ears, but to listen, to really listen, to read between the lines. This is what I'm saying, is that when we start to honor those senses that are rudimentary within us, the basic 5 senses, and strengthen our aptitude of being present with them. This is, look at you, look at you, look at you, look at me. We are like a living, breathing organism here. We're not just arms and legs and kidneys and toenails. You are like a badass, you're like a huge ring of DNA that has potential infinitely to spark and to charge. I mean, Greg Braden has already found out that the God code is within us. I mean, if we needed more proof, there's more and more proof all the time. All these sacred scriptures that are being found in clay vases in the middle of Egypt and wherever it is. Sacred codes that are telling us that we are God, that we are creators, that we are one and interconnected with all things and beings. And so, yes, you naturally have an aptitude for ESP. You naturally have an aptitude. But now, you know, up to you. Do you want to turn it on? You can turn it up to 1. You can turn it up to 11. Be mindful what you ask for. But again, it's using consciously senses that we already have, that as those 5 senses develop and conjoin and are worked in harmony with each other, that then the 6th sense is born. Those extrasensory perceptions that go beyond. And we're going to talk about this in part 2 of this. that go beyond actual perception and into a place of knowing, which is how we're going to end, because that's what God did want us to read from A Course in Miracles today. So in my practice, over the years, especially at the very beginning, when I was 21, I started a very sincere path of yoga, and I studied with a yoga Irish elder. And I didn't even know that there was a word called elder back then. But I was learning, and it was a very basic yoga. We weren't doing anything crazy, but it was like, she was old school. She was like, we're going to breathe. You're going to learn about pranayama. You're going to learn how to feel how the breath really moves through your body. And then how, when you do certain poses, how that breath moves. I mean, she was amazing. Towards the end of our little training, she started introducing meditation, dhyana. And she would light a candle and we would sit just for a few minutes and just gaze. This is such a profound practice. If you are seeking to strengthen your psychic abilities, but also to center and ground them, call in your white light, your angels, ask your higher self to hold space for you, and then gaze. Don't look, don't focus, but just soft gaze over the flame of a candle. And now I'm getting a download that we should do like a live stream sometime at nighttime with the candle and do a guided like candle gazing meditation. Ooh, that sounds good. But that this will strengthen your ability to see beyond the veils. What happened is, I remember I was like, oh, I'm seeing golden light around the flame. And my teacher goes, yes. I was like, whoa. And now I'm seeing the color blue. And now I'm seeing, and I started seeing first this golden shimmer and then all of these colors. And my teacher was like, yes, yes. Does anyone else see these colors? And no one else in the class was seeing them at the time. But I remember it was like, wow, yes, it was seeing that which is not usually visible to the physical eye. So if you want to practice seeing here, which is with your third eye, your light sight, which is always in tune with the heart, when you practice with intention, aligned with the heart, calling on love, holding space in the white light, all that good stuff that we've already told you. But you know what I mean. When you have that intention, that's what it will be. And if you have an interaction with the dark side, well then that's part of your practice, and it will be there for a reason for you to learn how to come back to the light. But ultimately, candle gazing is a very profound way to practice not only relaxation and meditation, but to practice activating your faculties to be able to perceive beyond the senses in a way to conjoin the power of the five senses, to activate them to their highest degree, and then also create a sacred space for the sixth sense, your extrasensory perceptions, to come into activation in their highest light without force. Meditation on breathing. When you just meditate, so, I mean, you can do this with the candle, but I'm thinking here in this one where your eyes are closed and where you really focus on breathing in and breathing out, watching the breath, counting to 4 as you inhale, holding the breath for 4. Exhaling for a count of 4, and doing this several times wherever there's a conscious breathing, breath work, pranayama practice in your meditation. This will help shift your senses. This will help activate and open your senses up to a greater degree as well. Nature, dusk or dawn in silence. You know, and that's what I was saying earlier. I know for me, when I go out into nature and I'm alone, I mean, it's like a cacophony. Like there's just, everything is talking, everything is humming, everything has a song, everything has information if you would care, everything is offering you healing. I mean, it's just, there's so much going on. All the little ants, all the little butterflies, all the little hummingbirds, everything is there with information. And so there's this communion in nature, but it's being silent and just being receptive and being that rod, that tuning rod of receptivity for the highest good. And then there's always, you pray to be shown and to be put in tune with whatever it is for the highest good. So perhaps part of your practice in the morning, you don't have time to sit around a candle or to go into nature, but a part of your prayer in the morning is, higher self, you know, for the highest good, activate within me my psychic abilities, my ability to experience extrasensory perception and telepathy, clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairsentience, for the highest good. You know, little by little, just give me little breadcrumbs, give me little bits to chew on as I begin to activate and grow into strengthening these muscles. You can ask in any way that feels in alignment with you, right, and integral for you and for your path, to start to open up these faculties. So it's interesting, the God phone rang earlier, and God wants us to read a paragraph from A Course in Miracles, which is, in my words, a reinterpretation of the teachings from the Bible, channeled as Jesus Christ. So this is Christ talking. And this chapter, I realize we're going to have to come back because it links in with the ion stuff that we were talking about earlier. So I'm going to read from chapter 3, page 40, Perception versus Knowledge. We have been emphasizing perception and have said very little about knowledge as yet. This is because perception must be straightened out before you can know anything. To know is to be certain. To know is to be certain. Uncertainty means that you do not know. Knowledge is power because it is certain, and certainty is strength. Perception is temporary. As an attribute of the belief in space and time, it is subject to either fear or love. Misperceptions produce fear, and true perceptions foster love. But neither brings certainty because all perception varies. Now, this is so thick, and I realize this is really for our ion conversation next week or whenever that's going to happen. But let me just go back, and there's another sentence or two here, but let me just go back. Misperceptions produce fear, and true perceptions foster love. So remember, we were saying earlier, how do you know what visions are real, what voices in your head you hear are, you know, for you or not? How does it make you feel? Trust your feeling. Does it feel good? Does it feel good? Does it feel bad? Does it feel weird? Begin to activate and practice your musculature, your ability to be present with what your intuition, what your feeling, realization, with what your clairsentience is giving you regarding any given thing. Now also, up here, to know is to be certain. And remember that clairsentience is pure knowing. It's to be certain. No, I just know we're not supposed to get that train. We're not supposed to get that train at 8:15. I just know it. I have a feeling. It's so strong. Let's just wait and get the 9 o'clock train instead. It's like those kinds of things where you just know you're not supposed to go. Okay, so for example, my mother, when she was pregnant with me, she was very heavily pregnant. It was almost time for me to be born, and it was her last Lamaze class that she had to do this one evening. It was a rainy, windy evening. My biological father was not there with her to take her to the Lamaze class for her breathing, for her pregnancy. She was out to here. She was exhausted. She was like, I do not want to go to this class. Something inside of her, she had a very powerful feeling, a clairsentient realization that said, go to that class. She could not deny it. She just knew it was the truth for her. She goes to the class. She comes, and now this is a bizarre and very profound example, but just to give you an example, she drives back and our whole street is cornered off with police tape, and our house specifically had been riddled with bullets. So, and it's a true story. So you imagine that's like on the profound end of this clairsentience, and how, you know, your knowing, you don't mess around with your knowing. When your knowing is like knocking on the door and telling you, this is pure knowledge here. Do not get the 8:15. Get the 9 o'clock instead, or whatever it is. You listen to that. And you see, we learn though, right? And on a lighter note, I know with dating, you know, at times, when you're single, for me personally, I didn't do much dating. And then I had a rung I dated several years ago. I was like, what's this dating thing about? Let me try it out. It did not take me long. to have some clairsentience about these individuals. The first one or two was like, oh, and just like taking them at face value and honoring. And then after like one or two of these kind of goofballs, I'll just say, I mean, and I mean it with all love and light, but just replaying, is that I started being like, oh, let me get serious about, let me energetically, tap in and see what's going on, because this is wasting my time. These goofball energies, like these people that are just out to have sex, or that are not what they say they are, or whatever it is. And so you start practicing your ability to discern, to, you listen to those clairvoyant messages. You listen when your clairsentience is saying, he is not a match for you, move on, have one drink and then go home. If you're getting the vibes, and your higher self, your clairvoyance, your clairaudience, you're hearing the voice in your head that's saying like, get out, and your feeling is saying like, he's not the one. And then he's like, so would you like another drink? And you're like, yeah, no, that's the point where you go, oh, no, thank you. I've had enough. And it was great to meet you. Bye, But like that, we all have these psychic downloads and these invitations to be more present to the divine information, the pure knowing that we're getting. But it's our ability to adapt and to honor it, right? That is the gift. So, misperceptions produce fear, and true perceptions foster love, but neither brings certainty, because all perception varies. That is why that is why it is not knowledge. Perception varies, that is why it is not knowledge. True perception is the basis for knowledge, but knowing is the affirmation of truth and beyond all perceptions. And now I know that's tongue-tied, and we've been here a long time this morning already. We're going to wrap up. But the idea that A Course in Miracles is presenting to us in that gift is saying that perception is that which we see. This is my words, how I teach it. Perception is that which we view with the physical eyes, with the 3D eyes, the physical reality. Whereas true sight, true knowing, is that which you perceive with the third eye, which I believe is the same as the eye of the heart. And if you sat through our chakra, chakra wisdom last week, it was all about eyeballs and all of your chakras being eyeballs. And it really was a lot of fun. And I did a presentation in that too, which I love, which was so much fun. I cracked myself up doing it. But so you see with a different perceptual lens. And that seeing is going to show you the truth. It's going to be that pure knowing, not this like, well, maybe this, maybe that. The physical eyes see in both fear and love realms. They see duality, whereas the third eye sees love and only love. So it will blast right through anything that's not fear. I'm sorry, it will blast right through anything that is not love and that is fear. And so the premise of that little paragraph in that teaching this morning is just to bring us back to, when you know purely, whatever it is you know through your sixth senses, through your psychic abilities, through your ESP abilities, when you know, and your knowing is based in love and in light, that is pure knowing. And you can trust your feelings. You can trust your guidance. If your guidance says don't go, then don't go, or take a different path. Or then you can ask, well, how else can I manifest this scenario, participate in this situation? And sometimes it's by doing nothing, and sometimes it's, well, here's a different plan. Oh, I can still go. It's just there's a different way that the universe, my higher self, is saying, take this route to do this plan of action, and this will better serve you and the highest good of all. I pray and I affirm that everything I share here truly serves your path of spiritual growth and sovereignty. I really and truly love this platform. There are more subscribers this week to this channel. Thank you. If you're watching and you've liked this information, give this video a thumbs up, please. Subscribe to this channel if you're not subscribed. Every week I do a weekly metaphysical energy tarot forecast and all sorts of videos, just random videos about everything spiritual, everything multidimensional. We get quantum, we get metaphysical, we get Reiki, we get into meditation, we get into all of it. Thank you so much. If you are if you're not subscribed at my actual website, all my links are down in the show more box. Go to my website, TuesdayMayThomas.com. you will receive a copy of my mini ebook, The Higher Self Blueprint of Mastery. And you'll also receive my monthly love letter. And it might go into your spam or your junk or your promotions. So just drag it into your inbox and you'll get it right in there every month. Check out my books. All my links are down below. I'm so very grateful for your time and your attention. I do have a new addition to my links. I do have a donate button. If you want to send me a few bucks through PayPal, the link is down below. If you're like, hey, go get yourself a cup of coffee or whatever it is, I am so grateful. I'm just so grateful. I thank you for your support, for your love and your light, for being here, for all of these comments and sharing your ideas, your experiences, and your conversation. I love you and I appreciate you. And I'm so very grateful. So blessings on this beautiful day with all of your juicy psychic ESP powers. May the force be with you. The force being love and light always. Namaste with so much love, everyone. Namaste. Blessings. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I'm so grateful. Have a great day.